Blog Talk Radio.
Dedicate our lives to this sport. We do thousands of sit-ups in camp. We run hundreds of miles, for the ones that take it serious. And we just dedicate ourselves fully to our craft, man. We watch tape. We have attitude. We rooting, and we go into that fight just to land on the line.
Hey, what up, boxing fans? This is the Rope-A-Dope Radio Podcast. I am your host, Chris Carlson. We are live on a Tuesday night. Hope everybody's doing okay. We're coming off a very entertaining fight week, and no doubt about it. We did crown an undisputed champion at the super middleweight division. The first time, since the four-belt era has started. So it was a really competitive fight. Caleb Plant fell short, clearly, but he fought pretty well. And obviously Canelo did end up chopping him down slowly but surely. Got him in the 11th round with a nice knockout, big left hook. Left hook kind of looked like it was going to the body for a second, and he landed it and definitely hurt him, and it was all downhill from there. I mean, he never quite could catch up all the way after that. He was definitely hurt. But, overall, I did think that he fought pretty well. I saw kind of a variety of scorecard out there. Some of it, maybe a little, I hate to use the word shocking, but much like how, and this was, shouts out to the UK fans, but this was kind of UK fans that were saying that Billy Joe Saunders was up back in May, like 5-2. What was that, the 8th or 9th round knockout? I think it was the 8th round knockout. So, or TKO, whatever you want to say. And I thought that was a little over the top, or not a little, I think it was over the top. And I did see, after 5 rounds, people tweeting, whether it's media members or just, hardcore boxing fans saying that Plant was up 4-1. Even further in the fight, I don't think I looked too much in those last few rounds, but I think the last one I saw a couple people say that they had Plant up like 7-2, 6-3, and all that stuff. But, going into the 11th round, I'll say this. The success that he had in round 8 and 9, and even 10, I didn't think he was going to get knocked out at that point then. Like, going into it, did I think, of course, there was a possibility for a stoppage? Definitely. Whether it's straight-up stoppage or TKO, whatever it is. But once the fight, was in the ring, yeah, I saw enough 8th and 9th and 10th that I didn't necessarily think that at that point he was going to get stopped. I thought he'd make it. I did pick him to make it the distance, but, Canelo just stuck to his game plan and proceeded to, slowly but surely land the harder shot. But, yeah, I did not see, so after there was 10 rounds, clearly that was scored. And one of the scorecards had Plant winning 2 rounds. One of them had 3, and one of them, I believe, had 4. So after 10 rounds, could I see Plant up, let's say, 6-4? I really couldn't. 5-5, I think 5-5's pushing it. I would settle in nicely as far as on the high end at 6-4 for Canelo. You know, I don't know if I gave him 4 rounds for sure, but I could see 6-4. I think that's a fair scorecard. I'm a round away from 5-5, but, you know, I'm pretty close to 7-3 too. So we're going to kind of go round by round, talk it through. I did think that, like I mentioned, Plant, his jab was very fast and pretty hard. Not hard enough to call it necessarily a power jab, but it was definitely winning him some rounds. His movement and defense held up for quite some time, and then it kind of just slowly – he definitely had the shoulder roll going. It definitely just kind of slowed down for him a little bit here and there. We talked about the right hand and how he needs to either throw a lead right hand, a right hand following the jab or left hook, or just, you know, landing the right hand some way and then, you know, in maybe a pot shot for him and then just dip it, you know, pivoting. So although he landed some right hands, they weren't all that effective, and he didn't land enough of them. I thought he could have just put another uptick in activity no matter what he was throwing. He did out-throw Canelo, but, you know, it's not like he had 600 punches thrown with 2 rounds left or something like that. I think he went over 400 punches, and they landed very similar. It's one of those fights that within the rounds, it can be what you like, you know. My thing is, if your best punch, and don't get me wrong, in some exchanges and some back and forth where they took turns landing good punches, he did land some really good left hooks, Plant. But really the best, going in, we kind of knew is either left hook or definitely the jab. And he definitely, Canelo in his tracks at times with the jab, at least make him reset, fluster him a little bit, but it didn't, you know, deter him from eventually just going right back, you know, towards him. There was a couple of times when he pushed him back early in the fight and a little later in the fight, but not nearly enough. So, yeah, I mean, when you look at, and we'll go through some of the copy box numbers just to, this is what you kind of use it for. You know, if you have some tight rounds and there's not much split in the rounds, then if you're going to be just a busier fighter, you almost have to double the guy up in lands. Like if you land 16 and your opponent's landing 8, okay, then you can at least say, well, look, dude, I landed a bunch of good punches. Not the power punches, but I still did, and that was not the case. I'm not saying he didn't land more in some rounds, because he did, but that's the type of stuff we're talking about, and when you can start to see the heavier shots add up, it's hard not to give a round. But as far as, like, some of the folks that had him up, you know, 4-1, 2, like I said, I saw a bunch of 7-2, 7-3, 6-3s. Then, like I mentioned, I didn't really look again because of the last couple of rounds and whatnot, and I wasn't paying attention to Twitter at that time during the break or anything. But overall, it was a competitive fight, so we are going to talk the recap with that. We'll talk about the really fun, exciting fight that we got on the ESPN Plus main event card. The scorecards were just real funky. Like, you know, sometimes we'll just get that one scorecard where you're just like, huh, what the hell was that ref looking at? But really, pretty much all 3 were bad. Was one acceptable? Maybe. You know, I doubt it. But the other 2, I mean, not to give the opponent 1 round, that was ridiculous. And then, of course, this weekend, Munguia and Rosado kind of lead the way. David Benavidez returns, a couple other fights that we'll talk about as well. And then, you know, of course, let's talk about what's next for Canelo. You know, who is next for Canelo? Is it Benavidez if he comes through somewhat injury-prone or whatever? Because it does sound like Canelo's going to fight in May, which makes a lot of sense. There's no point in rushing a fight maybe in February against maybe a mediocre opponent or anybody like, say, Yildirim, just to fight in May again. You know, he's been really busy, 4 fights in less than a year, so he did talk about how he does want to let his body heal, and he'll be definitely back, you know, at the top of the year to start talking about who's next. But who is next? Benavidez, Charlo, Golovkin 3. These are 168 fights, or will he just go to 75 and and fight Benavidez and try to find Bivol and whatnot. I prefer him to just get all the best fights he can at 168 and then eventually move up. I think if you start going up, down, and up, down, at some point that catches up to you minorly. I'm just not a big fan of that. Don't get me wrong. When I say I'm not a big fan of that, like, I wouldn't sit there and rip him if he went up and fought, Bivol and beat him and then came back down and fought Benavidez in September. I wouldn't be ripping him. I think it'd be pretty cool. But if you're, continually bouncing up and down, like you got these fights lined up, you can fight Benavidez. Charlo can get a fight at 168 to, acclimate himself a little bit and then fight him in September. And then, maybe then you fight Golovkin. Or maybe Golovkin is in May. I'm not sure, but we're going to talk about what's next. Speaking of what's next, a lot of folks message me that Stevenson, I should say, and Oscar Valdez is next, but I just don't see that happening. Hopefully it's next, the fight after. We'll get into that a little bit. Also, we'll cover just a little bit of the Team USA at the World Championships. 4 different medals, I believe, so that's really cool. Couple other items out there, fight news-wise. Virgil Hill left his trainer, which kind of took people by surprise. A couple of other, current fight news items. And then, of course, a little boxing Twitter segment where, we read basically the tweets of the week, some really great tweets, right, that really point out something or just hit home or whatever the case may be, or just funny as hell. And, of course, the fanboy tweets and the media members acting as fanboys. That's kind of all in that boxing Twitter segment. If this is your first time listening to the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast, welcome. It streams live right here on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. You don't have to go to Blog Talk and Rope-A-Dope and download the show directly there. Listen to the browser if you don't want to. You can find the platform on Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Player FM, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker, and a whole variety of places. We're also part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to thegruelingtruth.com, and then in a bunch of other places too, if you just Google it, Rope-A-Dope Radio. One more thing, though, if you're thinking about cutting the cord or you're not quite happy, I got something for you. It's called DirecTV Stream. The prices start as low as $69.99 a month. It's the best of live TV and on-demand, no annual contract, no hidden fees if you upgrade to the Choice or Ultimate packages. That gives you 3 free months of HBO Max, plus you get to enjoy regional sports networks with no additional fees, which, if you look at the cable companies, that's getting harder and harder to accomplish. And then also, if you go all the way to the Premier package, and this goes, applies to boxing fans as well, you get HBO Max and Showtime, which is really, putting on a lot of great fights lately anyway. HBO Max and Showtime in that package already included. That's DirecTV Stream. Okay, so that was a really a good fight, a competitive fight, right? It wasn't some kind of war or, I don't truly think anybody thought it was going to be just this complete, brawl or anything like that. But if you look, let's say, the first 3 rounds, right? I did think Caleb won 2 out of the first 3. His jabs, some left hooks, the movements. Whereas Canelo, he would land an overhand right from time to time. He probably stole the second half of the second round with some really nice body shots and a left hook to the head. I think he stole that round off of that. Some good body work, but I think the jabs, the left hook, and the defense on Plant was probably enough to give him a 2-1 advantage after 3. Then I thought Canelo kind of tightened up for me, although in the 4th round, Plant was busier with his jabs and a few right hands, not much. He did land a nice right hand counter in there. The inside shots, the flurries, the left hooks to the body or head, that was just Canelo. He was landing the better shots overall. In a close 5th round as well. I gave him the 6th round as well. Those left hooks whether it was to the body or head, and then the chopping right hands found a home, and that's ultimately the left hook chopping right hand is what ended it. So after 6, I was okay with right in that 3-3 range, maybe 4-2 Canelo, maybe, I don't know if it was 4-2 Plant, but, whatever. I was okay with right around a 3-3. The 7th round was really close, and I'll have to say this. I haven't watched it again yet. I am going to watch it with a friend here soon who didn't get a chance to check it out. We got a project that we're working on, so we're probably going to watch it together there. So maybe some of these rounds, I'll give an extra one to Plant or whatever. But the 8th round, I did think that Plant won that one. I thought that it was very close, don't get me wrong, but those shots that he was landing with the hard jab, like I said, left hook, and he actually landed some to the body in that round, and the movement was making Canelo reset a little bit more. I thought, so the 7th, like I mentioned, was close, but I favored Canelo. The 9th, I gave Plant the 8th. The 9th, that was really competitive too. Like I said, maybe if I went back and watched this fight again, or when I do, I'll be kind of back and forth on that. You know what I mean? But to me, the activity with the jabs and all that was nice in the 9th round, and I understand why people gave it to him, but I still think the better shots were from Canelo, And so I did like what I saw in the first, say, 3 rounds from Plant, and then even the last few rounds, starting with probably the 7th too, but the 8th and 9th and 10th, even though I didn't give him all those. The first knockdown came from a left hook, and it was one of those where it kind of looked like he was going to the body, lumped him up with the left hook, had him hurt right then and there. You could see his legs were in trouble. He was trying to, stable his right foot down, and it was just a matter of time. Those overhead choppy rights I spoke of started taking advantage. There was uppercuts, flurries, a right to the jaw, right to the ear. He basically stopped him. I mean, once Plant hit the ground for that second time, he was had a leg kind of hanging off the rope. It was over. He did try to kind of get his stuff together and get up a little bit, or at least look like he was going to try to get up. But the refs had stopped it by then. So I thought Plant gave a good account for himself. But yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to, and I just want to double check on those scorecards real quick that I said that properly, because I did get a little pushback here from that. So one scorecard, like I mentioned, had the first and the 9th round for Caitlin. The other one had the first, the 4th, and the 9th and 10th. So that would be 4, right, rounds. And then the last one had the first round, rounds 8 and 9. So that's 3. So I am correct. 2, 3, and 4. So yeah, I just didn't see having it 6-4. Like I said, I saw a couple 7-3s. I'm talking about in favor of Plant. Overall, though, as far as just talking about the CompuBox, Plant was busier at 441 thrown compared to 361. Clearly, the jabs, he doubled them up throwing, and then 42-15 overall. Now the power shots, Canelo threw 251 to 209 and landed almost double, 102 to 59 at a higher clip too, and then the body shots 52 to 11. So it's actually he landed more body shots than Plant landed jabs. And don't get me wrong, like I said, some of the jabs kind of stopped Canelo in his tracks momentarily or snapped his neck a little bit, but I just don't think overall he was active enough. I mean, he landed 23% of his total punches. It was 117 Canelo to 101. But when I'm talking about when you are activity-based mostly, like I said, the jab had some sting on it and definitely speed. And we talked about last week how you needed to show the judges you were landed. So whatever you were going to land, it was going to have to be clean and crisp, and you could see his head snap. And like I said, Did he land some right hands? Sure, he did. Only really one or two good counters, a couple of left hooks in exchanges early in that fight that actually I was like, oh, wow, if he keeps doing that, that's going to be major. But he didn't. But just looking at the punches landed, right? And you can look at thrown and landed and all that. There's not too many rounds where Canelo, threw more punches. The last 2 rounds is the only, I'm looking at it right now, the only one where he threw more punches than Plant. But you got to look at the lands. And I know this isn't a perfect science with CompuBox, but this is where I think it comes in handy. And also, we could say, oh, it's not correct, but we all know body shots don't get their just due when it comes to CompuBox, on average anyway. But you're looking at, so I'll say Plant's number first, then Canelo's second as far as lands per round. So the first round, 8-5. Second round, 15-13. Third round, 10-9. Canelo outlanded him in the fourth, 10-8. 9-8 the next round. Then Canelo, sixth round, 14-9. 10-7. 12-6 in the eighth. 12-11. So a very competitive round there. And even the 10th, 15-12. So there was a few rounds that he actually landed more than him, Canelo. But that's what I'm saying. If you land 1 to 2 to 3 more punches, but the power punch comes through, you're not really, like I said, if it's 15-8, well, then you've now stacked up a lot, a fair amount more punches in a round. And then Canelo would have to land something really big. Having the one big, nice, clean shot or a couple to the body and then a nice headshot, it'd be different if you're landing, 13 to, let's say, 17 punches a round. That's being busy. That's being active. And I'm not saying Plant wasn't somewhat busy at times. It just, for the folks that did have him, up in the fight 6-4, or like I said, I saw a few 7-3s. I just, maybe we're looking at something different. Like I said, maybe I'll give another round, to Plant. I watch fights again sometimes, and if they're good fights, I watch them again and again. But I don't know. I just didn't see him winning. Like, I wasn't in the 11th going, dude, Plant's up on the scorecards right now, dude. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm talking about us watching the score, watching the fight and scoring. And I'm not talking about the actual scorecards, because you never really know, especially with the Canelo guy, fight with the scorecards. But overall, I still think Plant did well, We'll talk a little bit about, obviously some of the undercard. Ray Vargas actually was very exciting. He was just letting off shots, especially to the body. Overall, even in the 6th round, he had outlanded him like 71-15. He had some good moments. We'll talk a little bit about Elvis Rodriguez' fight, which was a fun 2-way fight until it wasn't. And then obviously Anthony Durrell with that uppercut knockout, and Michaela Mayer too was in a really fun fight, spirited fight. Really liked that one. It was fun to see her have that grit where she sometimes pushed her back, fought right in the middle on the inside, and also sometimes pivoting and just making that subtle movement. I was very impressed with that. It was fun to see her in that style of fight, because obviously, you fight long enough, you're going to fight every style there is. Okay, so we will talk about what's next. No doubt about it. I think that they should. I think in a perfect world, well, that's such a dumb statement to say in boxing. In a perfect world, it's just not realistic. But I wouldn't mind Benavidez. I don't think he'll get the WBC mandatory called per se. I suppose it's been about, once he's done fighting, it'll be about a year since that Yildirim, what he fought this last February, and that was the mandatory. So and that was like an old mandatory too. So I don't know if they even call that fight for the mandatory, but I think if he fought Benavidez, if, obviously Benavidez gets through his fight and he's not hurt or anything like that, or makes weight or something like that, but fight Benavidez in May, and then, have Charlo go to 168 and fight just a solid guy to acclimate himself, and then fight Charlo in September. Of course, Benavidez maybe beats him, then you could have the rematch in September. But I would like to see whatever it is, Benavidez and Charlo, the next two fights. And he already said that it's going to be May. Now, if they throw Golovkin in there, am I going to freak out? No, I'm not the one. I mean, here's the thing. I understand what everybody's saying as far as, first of all, how many times has Golovkin even been up to 168? I mean, most of the fights he did, back in his prime, he didn't really want to go up there, which I understand. He was looking for that Canelo payday in that big fight. He had an opportunity to go up. He decided not to, but going up, it does seem like it's going to be more of a one-sided fight. And I don't think it'd be one-sided like people are saying, though, like fully one-sided. I think Golovkin's jab is just too good for it to be completely one-sided. And would he stop him? Maybe his chin finally, falters. Dude's got a freaking chin, though, Golovkin. So everyone's just kind of counting a knockout like it would for sure happen. Now, maybe going up in weight, he doesn't – maybe his power is not the same. Like I said, maybe his punch resistance is finally giving up on him. Maybe. I don't know that that's just a for sure knockout, though. My point is Golovkin 1 and Golovkin 2 were outstanding fights. The first one was great, phenomenal. Second one was a step up. And so many times in pay-per-view events or fights in general, at the tippy-top levels of the sport and at each weight class, we don't necessarily get that fight a whole lot, if we're being honest. Competitive, skill, brawl, kind of a big mixture of everything in those fights. And so the fact that they already did that twice, to me it's like, hey, man, I'm not going to sit here and bitch about a third fight. You know what I mean? I'm just not going to. Because, they gave us two great fights. I get it. The whole deserve thing is an argument, whatever. I would like Golovkin to have, fought somebody recently beyond just Derevyanchenko for an IBF Mando. His other two fights were pretty much jokes. It sounds like he's going to fight a pretty decent fight. I wish he would have already fought this guy next. But it is kind of funny how once Golovkin got old, people just, a lot of people, that were just Golovkin defenders at all cost, putting them in the same sentence of Hagler and B-Hop and whatnot. They really loved to dump on Miguel Cotto and Sergio Martinez back then. These dudes don't want it, this, that, and the third. Meanwhile, Cotto is actually lining up for a Canelo fight that he ended up fighting, and ended up being a competitive fight, a good fight, which that was his biggest payday. Funny how now it's okay for these same folks, and a lot of them are in the media. Now, a lot of people are like, all right, Golovkin, let's do something. But I do notice many folks, not worrying about it now that he's older. And I understand when you get older in that scenario. But I also understood Sergio Martinez, one good knee, Sergio Martinez, and then Cotto. I understood that as well. So they were making it, they were kind of degrading those great fighters. And now that we're here, those same guys are not degrading Golovkin. And I'm not saying, he should get degraded. Like I said, 2 out of his 3 fights were just garbage fights. But the Derevyanchenko fight was very good. And this next fight I don't mind, as long as that's actually happening. I assume it is. But I just kind of find it funny how that kind of goes into it. But, yeah, I'm not going to be one of those that are going to really overly complain. And to be fair, I'm assuming it could be on DAZN. Now, we've heard about the DAZN pay-per-view. So if it is on pay-per-view, then it's like, well, hold on, DAZN. You know what I mean? So either way, I kind of think that it's going to be at least $50. You know what I mean? I don't know if that would be involved in the subscription. I doubt it would. But, man, it's too bad if they don't, because that would actually draw that would be their biggest sub. We've known that forever as far as, Fury or Wilder never fought on that platform. So that fight or a Joshua fight, that'd be a huge sign-up getter too. But to have Canelo and Golovkin fight that third time they would get 1 million subs for sure, because if it's on straight up the zone. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, if they're getting over 1 million pay-per-view buys, then for sure they're. I don't know what's that mean. 1.5, 2 million signups. I have no clue, but it would be over 1 million. They've never cracked 1 million. They're surely not. I don't even know if they'd be 500,000 right now. Because a lot of people probably fell off. I mean, since May it was dormant, especially for Matchroom. And then obviously no Canelo. But anyway, let's bring in Great Boxing Mind. Just let me refresh my switchboard. Okay, John, sorry. All right, let's bring in John and see what he has to say about last weekend's fights. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit about some other action that took place. What's going on, John? How you doing tonight?
Hey, Chris. How's it going? Enjoyed listening to you start to recap things, and looking forward to talking about some good action last weekend and just what we have upcoming this weekend.
Yeah, so, Canelo just stuck to his guns as far as what he wanted to do in this fight. He made little minor adjustments, nothing major, but it was just like keep working the body, both right and left hooks to the body, left hook to the head, a chopping right hand I mentioned. Didn't really even throw a ton of jabs, actually. Just basically like the last couple, Callum Smiths and, Billy Joe Saunders. It was basically a very similar game plan. And I suppose parts of that third Golovkin fight when he started pushing forward, a little bit of the Kovalev fight like that too. What did you think overall of the fight and how it played out? And each side kind of comment on that, how each fighter did, maybe the shortcomings. And then also I'd like you to address how you had it scored, because I don't know if you saw some folks on Boxing Twitter and some of these guys that were tweeting some of these scorecards, I really respect. But there was a couple that I'm like, hold on, what? What's your scorecard? Let's address that after you kind of break down the fight.
Yeah, I ended up, I thought it was a good fight. I thought of it sort of the way you had described it, a good, competitive, skilled fight that wasn't a war or anything like that, or real back and forth drama, but a lot of intrigue. Plant was competitive the whole way, literally right up to the end of the fight. So I thought it was a good fight. I thought, at least as far as the main event went, considering it was a pay-per-view broadcast, and we have to, just the way boxing is, we have to evaluate that as part of things when we look at the success of the event. Good crowd. You had some celebrities getting back to that good Vegas atmosphere. So I thought the main event came off well. I did notice early on, I thought that Plant, as you thought he might, because even though he's a boxer, he kind of has a different style than that oftentimes. He started out with his jab a little more than I expected, and it was working. And then I saw some people, to me, kind of speculate, well, Canelo was so good defensively, and Canelo is very good defensively, and he's also got a great chin, that was why Plant stopped jabbing, after the first few rounds. I don't know about that. I just think, this is kind of the concerns Plant going in, not so much, at least you and I mean, not so much his talent level, but the fact that he hadn't really been in all that tough. And, now he's taken on Canelo, who at this point, even though it's a mythical title, is the consensus number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And for this era, who fighters take on, obviously he has the deepest resume in boxing in terms of who he's took on in his career, even now at this point at, age 31. So, it was a tough assignment for Plant, and I think in the sense of where he was at in his career, he got the big payday. I think that was obviously the goal. You're not going to fault anybody for getting that in the most dangerous sport, but it wasn't the best preparation for being in there. with Canelo. Forget alphabet belts. Plant was ranked number one by Transnational, which I agreed with. But, it's a case of too many weight classes. I support what Transnational's trying to do. So if they're going to rank 17, I go along with that and I participate with that. And I'm okay with that. But like you said, in the ideal world, we certainly don't have that in boxing. But there would be 8 or 9 weight classes. And why that matters and why I'm analyzing the fight is because, like we said last week, if you had 8 or 9 weight classes, Plant was going to be maybe roughly the number 10 light heavy, and Canelo is going to be the number 1 light heavy, or the champ at light heavy, and that's where you had a big gap. And I think as the fight went on, you saw some of that. Not that Plant didn't really know what he's doing, but you've just got that mental pressure from being in that position without really having that kind of experience level and preparation. And then that really, we've seen that with fighters in that type of situation in the past, and you saw it a little bit. It adds just a little bit to the physical fatigue. It's not that you saw him gas out or anything, but it's like you said, you saw him get less active at times than he would need to be, even though he was throwing more punches than Canelo, according to CompuBox, because Canelo is the much harder puncher, and you saw that Saturday night. There was no doubt about that. So, but I agreed with you. I thought Plant stayed in it, and I've done it the way you do it, but I haven't been writing down my rounds as I score like I used to. And I was trying to think of how I had it right as we got down the stretch of it more. I think Plant did have a good round in there, but I thought at the time it ended the 6-4, basically one judge having it, Canelo up by 2. 96-94, I guess. I thought that was reasonable. I had it about there. I thought it was about, it was about even, and then I think, Canelo started to pull ahead a little, and then Plant might have had a good round there, but Canelo had just started to build the lead up. But I also saw it the way you did, as we went into the 11th round, you and I both thought Plant would go the distance, and that was the underdog pick. So you have to look at how it played out. I think we both have nothing to be embarrassed about there because, he was well into the 11th round and wasn't showing any signs of getting stopped at that point. So I think we have to ourselves for really pretty much seeing correctly how this was going to play out, even though Plant ended up getting stopped. But I thought Plant, to me, the left hook's his best punch, and I didn't think he was able to get that. He felt confident in throwing it or getting it in for whatever reason. I thought that did hurt him in the fight. Canelo is good defensively, and him and Golovkin have the best chins in boxing, like I say, 1A and 1B. But, Plant does have a good left hook, a bit underrated, and he just wasn't really getting that punch in. I thought that hurt him. I saw what you did too. He was getting it. It was a big surprise, I think, to everyone, including Canelo. And Canelo did mention that a little bit after the fight. He was getting in a good straight right hand on a lot of occasions. And even though it's not his best punch and he's not a puncher, I'm not saying Canelo was hurt or anything like that, but it did look to me a few times like it was just kind of stinging him and stopping him for some moments. And that did surprise me. So Plant was getting that in, but it's just not his best shot. So he was doing some good things, and I agree with what you said. Canelo, as we've seen more in recent fights, it's not that he didn't come forward sometimes in other fights, like against Lara, but it's been a little bit different in these recent fights. I agree. We've been working for him. It's kind of a defensively responsible, cautious pressure. In other words, he's got the good head movement. He's got the good defense. He has a good jab, but he doesn't use it very seldomly. But it's power when he does use it. But he's not like jabbing his way in, but he's just got the good head movement. And then, he's throwing the good hooks, the body shots, and the uppercuts. And one thing I think about the 11th, when Plant ended up meeting his demise in the fight, he definitely got hurt by that first left hook. But I don't think. This is just from watching it live and then the replay, a couple replays afterward, but I'm pretty sure I got this down. He gets stung by the hook, but that hook wouldn't have taken him out. It was that right uppercut that Plant was ducking down in his defensive posture. And it is ironic because it was basically the same shot that made Sanders quit. Now, Plant didn't quit, but
right.
he went down, you know, but that was amazing because, you know, it's almost an unorthodox type shot for, you know, Canelo kind of reflexes, and that to be a knockout shot for him. But two good boxers in a row, and for what it's worth, but I think it is worth pointing out. I mean, to me, Plant did perform better than Saunders, and he showed more heart at the end and performed better during the fight because, you know, that was up for some debate beforehand. So, I mean, you got to call it like you see it after it played out, and he did perform better. But he got that shot. That shot did him in, and that's pretty much, you know, that is the shot that made Sanders quit. And that's because Plant was in big, you know, he went down after that uppercut, and, you know, you saw him. I give the ref credit for at least giving him a shot to go on because, you know, you saw him get up and he was falling all the way across the ring, but he wanted to go on, and I give the referee credit for at least giving him a chance. But, you know, Canelo was very accurate in the follow-up, and he had nothing left to hold him off with. And also that's where these things do matter. I mean, that's where he just didn't have he didn't have the experience. It took into the 11th round for it to catch up to him where he was going to lose the fight, and that's to his credit. But that's where you get into a tough spot, you know. And you know, we didn't talk about it that much, and you don't want to knock them because Plant performed well. They did a good job. There was nothing they did wrong. But with this experience level, you know, he's being trained by Justin Gambler and his dad. And, you know, you're going up Canelo and Reynoso in this spot. I mean, it's just
right.
It was just too big of an ask. You know, you put it all together, and sometimes it's too big of an ask. You know, for me, you know, even though the experience level was different, it just a couple of things we're talking about now that reminded me of like the Wilder Fury 3 situation, not because of the styles or anything, but just because, like, you know, Wilder in his case, he'd already had a draw with Fury and then got soundly beaten in the second fight, and he's coming in at 238 training at home, you know, with Malik Scott as the trainer. And it wasn't that Malik Scott did bad, but you know, you're just stacking up too many bricks. You know, it's just too big of an ask. And when it gets to be too big of an ask, that's, you know, just when you're throwing darts. In other words, you're hoping for a win more than you're prepared to win. And, you know, in the Wilder fight, we saw it where he won the first round. He jabbed to the body. That was obviously something Malik Scott came up with, and it worked. And as soon as he got caught in the second round, you never saw that jab to the body until the fight ended. You know, the fight ended, you didn't see it again. So just saying that when you're not really in a circumstance where maybe you're in the best preparation for whatever reason, you know, when you get in these tough spots in the fight, and you got that mental and physical pressure, which tires you out, and you're not maybe all the way prepared for the situation, it's just too much. And, you know, I think that's what did end up happening to Plant by the time he got into the 11th. But he held his composure and fought well. I thought he performed real well. I think, like you talked about the scorecards and people you respect, I look at that too, and sometimes it's a head scratcher. I couldn't see Plant ahead at the time, but, you know, there was a lot of tight rounds that could kind of go either way. And like you say a lot, you know, what do you like? And I think that happens a lot. And it's just easy to say judges are corrupt, or somebody on boxing Twitter who didn't have it like you did is an idiot. You know, it's easy to throw that out. It's kind of more harder to look at in a nuanced way that, you know, it's in pro boxing and you got a lot of subjective criteria. It's really not supposed to be scored by punch counting alone. You know, in other words, if somebody lands 2 real big hard shots and somebody else lands a bunch of pity pat shots, it's not amateur boxing. In pro, you can give the round to the guy that landed the couple of hard shots, but some other people might be looking, well, I know people that score like that. You know, just this guy landed more punches in that round, period. He wins the round. And, you know, like you were looking at accurate comp box numbers with what Plant was throwing, if you're looking at it that way, you might give Plant some of those rounds. I just think, and I don't think I'm imagining things. I think as the decades have gone on in boxing too, I think the fighters have just as much talent. I'm not somebody that buys that all the old guys are better or anything like that. But, even though boxing's the most dangerous sport, you get hit in the head. We know things about head trauma that we didn't even know in the old days. I mean, they had the term punch drunk, and they had sense of it. But still, we know how much more the guys fought and how much longer the fights were allowed to go on and things like that. And, I'm not saying that some of that doesn't need to change for safety. But what I'm getting back to the point of for scoring rounds, I mean, you have fights that are the exception, no doubt. But I think in a lot of fights nowadays in more recent times, the fighters aren't going to be quite as reckless, and just be coming forward, throwing shots, willing to take one to give one and things like that. And sometimes I think you got a lot of rounds nowadays, a little more than the past, where not as much is going on. And, it's kind of really subjective and that's where I think that's where a lot of these scoring controversies come from, because if you're not going to have even rounds, then like I've said, Chris, and I think you agree, I mean, people never admit it, but what they do instead of giving even rounds is, oh, this round was close, I'm giving it to Canelo. This round was close, I'm giving it to Plant. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with who won that specific round. They're just splitting it up, because if you look at these judges' scorecards at the end, even when some people say, oh, that judge did a good job, but like 2 of the 3 judges did a good job, but the 2 of those 3 judges didn't score any of the rounds the same. In other words, they might have had it both 6-4 for somebody, but they scored all the rounds differently. So what are we talking about? In other words, it's a subjective thing that people have a lot of different opinions on. And, I think you got some of that with the Plant Canelo, like you said. There were people who you respect who had Plant up, and I thought he was real competitive. I thought he was right in there, and then Canelo started to pull away. So I don't think it was like completely crazy, but I'm with you. At the point we got to the 11th round, myself, I couldn't see Plant up anymore at that point. I didn't see it. He was still in the fight, but I didn't think it was at a point where he needed maybe needed a knockout to get a draw or something like it. He could have still pulled a draw out or something like that, but maybe a knockout to win. But, I think that, that the 96-94 Canelo at the end was reasonable. And I thought those other cards, again, I could see maybe how they got there, but I thought they had Canelo a little too far ahead. So, again, it's a subjective thing, but that was pretty much my take on the main event. Credit to Canelo for the win. He's performing real well. Overall, fighting better competition in this era than other people. His schedule. And I think, like you said about the upcoming fights, it's got to be a question maybe now is, does he still want to have tune-ups in there, or is he just going to fight twice a year and getting his $40 million paychecks and make him tough fights that it's not worth him going through a training camp anymore for a tune-up type thing, at least until he gets a little older. That's what I'm kind of curious. I don't know which way he's going to go there.
Yeah, let's say he takes a little break this time over 6 months, fights in May, fights in September, maybe then he'll fight, kind of a mediocre guy in December or early January or something to give him enough time to recoup and then have a full camp for the next May after that. That will be interesting. What do you think about shit? Like, obviously this is, kind of all over the place, but the combination of Benavidez and Charlo, the next 2 fights, maybe a Golovkin third in there. I don't know. Maybe I'm just old school. Maybe I'm just picky. Maybe I'm just selfish or whatever. But I wouldn't mind seeing him just go ahead and fight fighters at 168, because there are more there, and potentially there anyway. Just get him out of the way, whether it's only 2 more fights, 3 more fights, whatever. Maybe in a year and a half when he's done with 3 names, or a year, maybe Morrell will be closer to being ready by that time. Obviously, that's some, hometown biasness there, but I wouldn't mind him just doing to 168 and then really going to 175 and staying there instead of this bouncing back and forth all the time. Like I mentioned, if he did it, I'm not going to rip him, but it kind of makes sense to be like, all right, you fought those 3 fights. The Zone had those guys. Okay, Showtime and PBC has these guys. Go through them and then go up to 175. What are your thoughts on who he'll fight next, who you would prefer? And then, you know, I mean, who knows? Maybe he will just bounce back and forth for the next couple of years.
Well, I think, and I tweeted this out a couple of days ago, and, you know, a lot of times I'll talk about the PBC thing because, you know, I want to, you know, just being in the United States and, you know, the history of boxing in the United States. Of course, I watch boxing worldwide, but, you know, I want to see the popularity of boxing in the U.S. do well. And PBC, you know, took the lead on that in 2015 with trying to change things. And, you know, to their credit, Top Rank made an adjustment then. And I think, in other words, Top Rank's doing the right things now, too. Like, you know, the ESPN and the ESPN Plus cards, trying to get some exposure. They cut down on their pay-per-views. Obviously, they've tried to run in recent years. You know, they're going to be involved in another one, but that's combos with PBC. The only one their own they tried was the Crawford Khan, which they shouldn't have tried, and it was a big flop, rightfully so. But they didn't go back to the well. So, you know, that when I talk about that, I just think for DAZN, I mean, I have DAZN. It's, you know, I watch it, but to me, it just does nothing for U.S. boxing exposure. I criticize it for that reason from the beginning. And, you know, we all have times we're right. We all have times we're wrong, but I don't have any problem saying I feel like I was proven right on that one. So, you know, but what I'm getting to here is, to me, I do see the opening for a Canelo PBC schedule that I honestly feel like just makes the most sense for Canelo because, like I've said before, and, you know, I kind of caught it after the fact pre-fight, though, and it's the first one of those I've caught for a while, and I know they're relatively popular, but I did catch the all-access with the Canelo and the Plant, and I thought it was good. But why I'm referencing it, like you saw in the all-access, Canelo, like I've said before, because it just was always my understanding, and that was right in there. You know, he spends a lot of time in San Diego, and there he was learning his golf in San Diego out on the golf course. So what I'm just saying is the guy, you know, Canelo is a Mexican, and he does great ratings on Mexican TV, and that's great. But he fights in the U.S. He spends time in the U.S. He's speaking good English now, so he's a proud Mexican. But he's obviously got a lot of connections to the U.S. and you know, he's really overall the most popular fighter in boxing with a U.S. connection. So, you know, he can help the American boxing popularity a lot with even more U.S. exposure. And then you've got Charlo, you know, an American fighter, Jamal Charlo, who's talented. He's, you know, undefeated. He's done some solid ratings for this era on Fox when he's appeared on there. You know, he had an entertaining pay-per-view with his brother, that doubleheader pay-per-view. You just heard rumors about what the numbers were, but at least that was an entertaining show. So he's had some exposure, just like Plant has had some exposure, and I think that's good. You know, you saw, at least arena-wise, I mean, I don't think the gate drives things anymore. This is not the old days, but you did see a good crowd in attendance. So, you know, you would expect that type of thing from Charlo and Benavidez. So what I'm getting to is the schedule they're talking about is actually, to me, the schedule that for Canelo and U.S. boxing popularity, which would make the most sense, which would be, you know, fight Charlo or Benavidez next, you know, at 168, then fight the other one. And then what I'm thinking is the dark horse, because I just don't know if he can take Beterbiev power, but, you know, if Marcus Brown's getting the fight with Beterbiev next, I mean, Marcus Brown has the offensive skills and the amateur pedigree to hang with Beterbiev. The problem is the first time he gets hit on the chin with Beterbiev's power, he might go. But what I'm getting to there is, let's just say the improbable happened, and Marcus Brown's going to train with Derek James, though, which is a perfect fit for his style, because when you've looked at the good Marcus Brown, he looks like a light heavyweight Errol Spence. I mean, they're both southpaws with good offense in both hands, good boxing skills. It's just, Errol Spence can take a shot and Marcus Brown can't take a shot. But
right.
But Derek James is a good fit. I mean, that's a good fit. He's going to go to Texas and train with him. I like the fit. So why I'm saying all this is Marcus Brown's PBC. If he were to upset Beterbiev, he would be the lineal light heavyweight champ. Canelo's already beaten Kovalev, picked up one alphabet belt there. I mean, if you're a historian, and I think that's the right way to look at it, I mean, if Brown were to beat Beterbiev, Canelo goes up and takes him, he's the light heavyweight champion then too. He's done this 168 stuff, and then he could be a couple fights away from being the light heavyweight champion. And, I also wonder, even if Beterbiev wins, I mean, Canelo, if he wanted to work with PBC and they wanted to do a pay-per-view with Top Rank or something, if that's the fight he wanted, they could probably, the way they've been going lately, they've got Crawford Porter coming up. I mean, they might be able to work that out. But I'm thinking the schedule that fits in place is what you were talking about with, I would put on top of that, if Brown pulls the upset, I mean, he's PBC. So Canelo could then do the two 168 fights that are good U.S. fights with, Benavidez, a Mexican-American, and, Jamal Charlo, American. Those would be good, solid selling fights, and you could top it all. Possibly Marcus Brown, if he pulled the upset for the light heavyweight lineal title, or if Beterbiev wins, they want to work something out there. I'm with you. Just for the record, though, I mean, I did think that, the Canelo-Golovkin was kind of unfinished business. I've never been against the third fight. I think it would still be interesting. Golovkin has the chin and power. I just look at that there, and you take a guy with a chin and power, even at, age 39, he's going to still be somewhat dangerous. So I've always been okay with it. I just don't like it with the DAZN. I mean, heck, I'd like to get it for my DAZN subscription price. But like you said, would they be doing that at this point? I mean, now they're talking DAZN pay-per-view. I mean, again, it's not anything against DAZN, but it's that U.S. exposure type of thing. I mean, if it's just going to be on DAZN with a pay-per-view element, I mean, how many people is that going to get to in the U.S.? It's just not. I don't care what anybody says. And, Golovkin, he did do well with Canelo on previous pay-per-views in a different format, but, he's not an American, and, nothing against, he trains in the U.S., nothing against him there. But I'm just talking about, kind of the building up U.S. boxing with the big fights. But that fight itself, I've never been against it. I would be on board with if Canelo wanted to go in that direction. I'm just starting to sense that Canelo doesn't want to give Golovkin the payday. It seems like that's.
I think that's it.
It seems really that it turned like that more than anything, because Canelo, as he famously poked fun at Andrade, you want payday, you want payday. Canelo is very well. He proved right there in English. He's very well aware of that. He knows his own value. You got to give him credit there for the self-awareness. So when you hear him talk like that, he's certainly capable behind the scenes of saying, I'm not giving this guy another payday. He's gotten on my nerves. Because remember after the clenbuterol controversy, Golovkin, with Loeffler, they're doing their business thing, but they squeeze more money out of Canelo. He had to give up part of the purse to Golovkin, and they were looking smart business at that time, but I'm sure Canelo didn't forget that and think, guy, I gave you a payday, and now to make the second fight still come off, I got to give you part of my purse. He probably didn't appreciate that. So I think the only thing that makes me wonder about that Charlo Benavidez schedule and then maybe the light heavyweight fight is not so much the PBC thing. I think Canelo, even he probably knows the business value of that right now with the U.S. connections, but does he want to go with a schedule that tough? Does he want to go, Benavidez or Charlo, whichever one comes first, and then to a tough light heavyweight fight right after that? Maybe he does. Maybe he just thinks, I don't want to waste my time at this point. That's where I don't know exactly what he's thinking. Or, some people suggested it, and to me, it's fights I don't want to see, that we don't need any more of. But this is the sport of boxing. I can't rule out, like, you know, would he use an alphabet mandatory as an excuse to, you know, to me, just blow away a John Ryder or somebody like that. I don't need to see that. But this is boxing. There was a Yildirim fight recently. So, you know, we can't, I want to count that out, but though the sport of boxing, I'm not sure that I can count that out.
Yeah. And I mean, if 2 out of the 3 fights are that, well then, you know, it's easier to swallow that, you know? It's like, all right, well, as long as you don't put it on pay-per-view if it's Yildirim, you know, I think it's a little easier to swallow that. But we'll see. Yeah, like you said, you know, tough fight after tough fight after tough fight after, you know, at some point, especially if you want to remain active, there might be something like that. I wouldn't doubt it. Maybe that would split the 2 fights between Benavidez and Charlo. Maybe that Benavidez fight is tougher, you know, than some people assume Benavidez is the best fight. You know, I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't matter if someone were to get hurt or if he was able to, you know, did get hurt or something like that. I suppose that plays into it as well.
Yeah, and I think also because people are saying it, I think Jamal Charlo's a tough fight for him. I was surprised in the last couple of weeks to see a couple of people saying like, "Oh, that's an easy fight now," and I don't see that way.
Right.
So, and I've always been a big Canelo booster from very early in his career, and still am in terms of his talents. But you know, I'm saying that because I don't think Jamal Charlo's easy for him, and I don't think Benavidez is either. But I think both of those guys, maybe not quite to the extent of Plant, but I think it's where you run into some of the same problems, though, is, you know, if it is a tough and tight, you know, even a Jamal Charlo, he's got better experience than a Plant, and so does Benavidez by a little bit, not as much as Charlo does, but they don't have that, you know, they're still not quite that Canelo level of having faced that opposition and that experience. And, you know, is it enough to make that jump? I you know, it's tough. Benavidez, you know, he's got that size with the offensive abilities, but I always, you know, I think most of the time the weight stuff gets overrated by people. But for me, Benavidez fighting at 168, he always looks weak. You know, I've seen him when he's fought at light heavyweight, and he looks, even though it's lesser opposition, he just looks much stronger. He looks better.
Sure.
And, you know, he's fighting that would hurt him a bit to me if he's fighting Canelo at 168 pounds. He just looks weak to me at that weight, and a tough fight, you know, that's where that might really hurt him. But we'll see if Canelo wants to go in those directions. I mean, I think that those are fights that PBC can pay him well for in the U.S. And you know, Vegas is back in the game now, and that always matters with the site fee because of the people they can bring into town. So, you know, that adds another element, you know, because Vegas wants those kind of fights that are going to bring people to town, and they're willing to pay for them. And you know, with the pandemic, you know, lessening a bit, that's even more in play now.
Yeah, and it is kind of funny. I mean, some people are acting now because it didn't happen. That Benavidez is the number 1 fight. It's not even close. It's hands down. It's like, well, I mean, he fought Durrell and some other veterans, but it's not like he, you know, and let's be honest, he hasn't been the most disciplined guy either. So it is kind of funny how it's almost like the opposite. No matter who it was going to be, if he did fight Benavidez, oh, dude, he hadn't fought anybody. Plant slicker. He didn't want to try to get outboxed, and you know, or even Charlo. You know, a year ago, before the Montiel fight, people were like Charlo first. You know, but just looking at that jab, both those guys' jabs. But when you look at the jab of Charlo, now he hasn't shown the same power at 60 from 54. I think that's obvious, and so that would be an interesting thing to see. 168. I'm assuming he'd still have pop, but you know the power wouldn't be there like it was at 54. But that, you know, that is what it is. But he does have a legit power jab, and he will throw his right hand, and he will throw extra punches in an exchange. And he won't just, be trying to just, land a jab here and there. And I think Benavidez with the combo punching and his own jab, that will be more exciting. And, in some of those fights, you never know. It might be Canelo being, backed up, or maybe just in the middle of the ring. Kind of more like the Danny Jacobs fights, where both those guys were kind of in the middle of the ring. But, the Charlo jab, if you look at that jab in the Derevchenko fight and what that did overall, when you can just keep going back to that, it definitely is worth fighting. And, some of it is just PBC, whatever. It's kind of like a lot of people said this fight, nobody wants to see this fight, nobody knows Plant, and then you look at the gate and you're like, are you sure? You sure nobody wanted to see this fight? It's pretty healthy, dude. Do you think they're going to sell tickets like this for a fight nobody wants to see? So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, anything from the undercard, Ray Vargas, considering the time off, looked fairly sharp to me, looked good overall. He was definitely, landing some pretty explosive shots to the body. He had that one, I think it was the 6th round, where he landed just a bunch of punches, like 71-15. Maybe that was the body shot comparison, actually, now that I look at my notes. But I thought he looked good for the time off. I'm interested to see him at 126. Elvis Rodriguez and Romero, that was actually a fun fight. Rodriguez and his uppercuts and combinations, and I think it was, the 4th round that he landed that left hand that knocked him down. Good back and forth fight, though, and then obviously I think it was the left hand that knocked him out. And then Durrell with the uppercut knockout of Hernandez. So we had, I think the two-way fight would probably be that Rodriguez-Romero as far as the most two-way fight. Baez was just kind of there. Don't get me wrong, he did land a fair amount of punches. I'm looking at it, 215 to 166. What'd you think of the undercard? And then we'll get to that ESPN Plus main event that was fun too.
Yeah, on the undercard, Ray Vargas, I thought, he's been off for like 2 years. You have to take that into account, but he wasn't in tough with Baez. And I like the way he started. He looked like he was really trying to make a statement, setting down on his punches more, really whipping some hard shots. But then I saw from him what I've seen from some other guys lately that I actually find a little bit frustrating. And actually the week before you saw, even though he's less experienced, you saw it from, Michel Rivera, like, kind of coming out like that. And then when the guy won't go, taking your foot off the gas and not pressing to still get that stoppage and make a statement, kind of make the marketing statement. That's where, again, boxing's a rough sport, and, you want to, the fans, like Emmanuel Stewart always said, the fans want to see knockouts, and that's why I look for that. And I thought Vargas getting this good undercard spot, I thought he took his foot off the gas after going hard for a few rounds and not able to get Baez out there. I didn't like that, because I thought that was kind of the dull Vargas that we'd been seeing a little bit, when he was with Golden Boy before the layoff. He wins, but he's tall, and then he can keep the guy at range, and he's got a good volume, but he doesn't look for the KOs and doesn't really look to get the power on his shots. It looked for me like he was trying to rectify that in the first half of the fight, but then when Baez wouldn't go, he just gave up on it. And so for me, that I didn't care for. But PBC has a lot of fighters around that weight, because let's face it, no matter what some fans that should be educated better on it think, 122 is an alphabet created class. Anybody can move up from 122 to 126. And so why I say that is, you got a big fight coming up with Figueroa and Fulton. Gary Russell Jr. is still fighting at featherweight 126. There's fights around that area with the PBC guys that are good fights. So I think Vargas is definitely a player in that, and I think that's why PBC signed him, and he just had some injuries, and the COVID came up. So I think that's why he got this undercard spot. I think they definitely have plans for him with all these other fighters they've got available. So there's a lot of good matchups there, and you got Romero. They have Romero. Of course, they did pick him up when Golden Boy let him go. So they've got fights that can be made. They're good fights. So I think they will make those. I think we'll get to see those. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. They talked Vargas, Gary Russell Jr. Vargas got this undercard spot. Gary Russell Jr. is going to need a fight. That wouldn't surprise me if that fight happened. And that's a good fight. I do like that fight. Just wish Vargas tried to make things a little more intriguing. Not that he can't win those fights, but I wish he tried to make it a little more intriguing by getting the stoppage. But that's my own criticism of there. He obviously dominated the fight and won easily. Durrell, was in with not a formidable opponent, and he's 37 now, but he got a big knockout, and that does always help. I mean, that was not somebody laying down or anything. Hernandez, we could see that was obvious. That was a huge shot, that uppercut. And then Rodriguez started out slow. I thought it looked like he had the better offensive skills. He didn't seem to want to engage with Romero, but Romero was throwing a lot, aggressive, but didn't look like the firepower was really there. And Rodriguez seemed to have that figured out. Was a little bit cautious, but then when he opened up, it was impressive. Looked like he could have done it even a little bit earlier, but I give him credit. When he did open up, he got the job done, and that was a big KO. So at least there was two good knockouts, but in overall quality, I don't think it was a good undercard. The main event I thought worked out well in terms of competition, and was an intriguing fight. And they're going to look at that's what most fans look at, but we're getting a lot of PPVs thrown at us, and a lot of it buyers are hardcore fans. I mean, let's face it, it is a lot just the same buyers. I do think those kind of fans, they know an undercard and appreciate it. I think they got to be given undercards of a little bit better quality, but at least there was two good knockouts on the undercard. So that does give you something there. But we got a lot of pay-per-views coming up, and I think got to make sure these qualities go all the way through. I think one thing worth adding on that is with the demise of the casual boxing fan. I mean, we know back in the day, all of us could have been involved in these. You have a lot of people over the house for a pay-per-view or something like that. Those days are mostly gone. In other words, there's not 20 people splitting the pot anymore who are going to all come over for these fights, to join you with these fights. So it's the same people that got to reach into their pocket and pay for them. So make sure the quality's there through the card.
Yeah, I think I read a report of not several years, but a few years back, saying it's more like 3 to 5 now is their average, what they think. And that's kind of open for interpretation, 2 to 10 and 2 to 8, and But yeah, you're right as far as the Pacquiao, Mayweather, those type of names, but not right. Pay-per-view card after pay-per-view card is it a fight party scenario. And that's also why I love
right.
And that's why I do like what the PBC did with putting the fights in the theater, because you're looking at like $22 for like 3-4 hours of entertainment. That kind of is like, all right, dude, it's a little bit a little funner. It gives you the crowd activation and whatnot. But yeah, especially down the stretch here. And of course, we do know that the main event cost a whole hell of a lot, so we get that. But one way to look at it is they could probably put a smaller fight on there that you're not going to put a bunch of money up, but something that was on a Showbox or a FS1 or something like that, where you go, well, this is a good 10-round fight, though. So there is ways to wiggle around that, because sometimes they do use, not of late with Hurd, but Hurd's been on a co-feature in a Stay Busy fight or a tune-up. But, some of those guys have decent-sized guarantees as well, whereas if you put, some 122-pounders or something like that in there, you could maybe spend $150,000 on both of them, and it's going to be a good fight. So, I understand that $50 million or whatever went to the top of the card. So this one's a little bit tougher, but not all of them are that kind of money. So it has to be somewhere in between, no doubt about it. Casual fans that did see this were entertained. I can kind of tell that just because of the way it turned out. But to your point, there was only a handful of rounds in those 2 fights, 2 out of 3 that were what you'd say even competitive. But yeah, moving on, Michaela Mayer and Hamauch, something like that is who she fought. Michaela, this was a fun fight to watch. ESPN Plus main event. I was actually up north, out of town, watching the fight and whatnot for the whole weekend, up with my nephews and nieces. And so I only watched the main event on stream. So that I didn't get to see the undercard. I was going to go peep some of those fights as far as some prospect stuff. But as far as the main event goes, this was a fun fight, and it was fun to see Michaela in a inside scrap. She's very skilled. She can pivot well. She can move well. She's very fundamentally sound, got a good jab, good accurate puncher, sets up her shots. And she did some of that, don't get me wrong, but from the start, she was just winging that right hand. Sometimes a little pushy, pushing it a little bit, but she came to fight, and it was a good inside fight. Some of the rounds were really, really close, exciting back and forth. I gave Michaela rounds 1 and 2 pretty cleanly. The third round was competitive. I gave that to her opponent. The fourth round was really competitive. You did see Michaela start to pivot a little bit more in there and kind of land short punches kind of early and late, whereas the right hands and left hooks may have won that round in the fourth. Then I thought Michaela kind of opened up some room. The 5th, 6th, and 7th, 5th through 8, I had 3 out of 1. The 7th, I was wrong. Her opponent won that. To me, just a better shot. She was kind of flurrying to the head and body, like the hooks and these roundhouse right hands. But I did like the little slight adjustment, the little slight pivot movement with the jab. She started throwing the uppercut, did Michaela. The cleaner shots, several just flush, hard shots. The 9th round, I thought, went to her opponent, but she really put a stamp on it. Not only landed the better shots and showing defense, the last, minute of the fight or maybe 40 seconds, she was pushing forward, closing hard on that one. So I had it about 7-3, 6-4, maybe 6-3-1, something like that. I didn't have it a draw like I saw some folks, but 100-90 is just like, really, a 99-91, 98-92 maybe. That's 8-2. I don't know. I'd probably give her more rounds than that. Like I said, I could give her up to 3 or 4 rounds. What do you think of the main event? Because like I said, we don't get to see her, Michaela, in this type of fight much, and it's fun that we know, okay, not only did you get to do it, you got to do it on a pretty high level in the sport, but also I think she can make some improvements for the next time that type of fight takes place too.
I thought it was a great fight. I saw basically like you did. I thought that Michaela Mayer, but I think this is one that, we've talked about this before, and I think this was frankly a good example of one of those. Remember, a fight can be very competitive, and the most of the rounds, the vast majority of rounds could still be going to one fighter. I mean, I thought this was one of those fights. Now, I'm not saying that Hamadouche should not have won any rounds. I wasn't looking at it that way, but I thought Michaela Mayer clearly won the fight. I mean, I just thought she was landing the harder shots every round, and she was digging hard to the body. I mean, what I saw from her in this fight, not only was it an action fight, but what I saw from her that I had wanted to see was, even though a lot of it was up close, still, she's 5'9", real good size for the weight, 130. She was getting leverage on her punches in this fight, and that's what I wanted to see from her, because she's got good skills, and she's got that height where she could get kind of a whip action, and And I think she's one of the women that really would benefit from the 3-minute rounds. I think she'd be stopping people. I mean, she's at a disadvantage only having 2 minutes, but I saw her really get the leverage in this fight, and she was putting a lot of hurt on Hamadouche to me. I mean, Hamadouche showed a lot of heart, and she was throwing a lot of punches coming forward, but those shots had nothing on them compared to what Michaela Mayer was throwing. And Michaela Mayer was just ripping apart the body. I mean, she was just banging all kinds of, vicious body shots throughout the fight. And, this is like you say, Chris, and these are even people I respect too, same thing, but it just shows you what a subjective sport boxing is. This is before we got down the stretch. I mean, I'm watching that fight and I'm tweeting and I'm saying, basically seeing it like you were, probably even more so for Mayer, though, that, like, look, this is a great fight. These rounds are competitive, but Michaela Mayer's getting the leverage and banging the body. She's just punishing her. And you've got these other people saying, oh, no, this fight could be going either way, and Hamadouche is doing all this stuff. And so we're going along, this is my narrative and this is the other people's. And what do you get? I mean, it was, I think, in the ninth round, and I agreed, and I'm not saying I said it should be stopped, but, I mean, I'm not making this up. This is before our own eyes from the man in the ring with the two fighters. He's going to Hamadouche saying, you're taking too many clean shots. I'm going to stop the fight if you keep taking all those clean shots. So there's somebody in the ring with the two fighters saying he's about to stop the fight because Mayer's basically beating her up. And then you have people on Twitter saying, that's outrageous. Well, okay, the judges are all outrageous. The referee who's in the ring with the two fighters is saying he's thinking about stopping the fight. Are they all on the take, or maybe are you seeing the wrong fight? That's where I think it's funny how we've all got biases, and I'm just saying that I thought it was a clear Mayer win. I'm not saying Hamadouche shouldn't have gotten any rounds, but to me, that missed the story because they all got on Patricia Morse-Jarman's card that night, and then the next night she was on Canelo Plant, and she had Canelo up 96-94, which I thought was the most reasonable scorecard of the night on Saturday night. So was she corrupt? Was she corrupt Friday night, and then she got non-corrupted Saturday
right.
night? I mean, I know you agree with that, Chris. You use logic there, but a lot of people don't. I mean, what was it? How was this conspiracy operating? Was she just a top-ranked conspirator on Friday night, but then they put her back in Saturday, and she doesn't, she doesn't work for Canelo? I mean, what is it? What's the Nevada judging conspiracy? And I'm not saying they don't have biases and things, but I'm not saying that was a good scorecard Friday night, but it shouldn't have been the story. I mean, I just didn't think that was fair to Mayer. It was kind of an irrelevancy because I looked at it like you did, and I'm not saying that there weren't some rounds that maybe you couldn't give to Hamadouche, but I did tweet, and I still say this: if you thought she deserved a draw or won, you're crazy. You're nuts. So, I mean, that would have been the most nutty thing of the night because that was a fight that Mayer clearly won. And then you did have a lot of people saying, yeah, she clearly won it, but I didn't like that card. So I'm thinking, okay. And, Chris, you think like I do like this, so we're always on the same page, I feel like. Okay, so then you're admitting that in rounds it was at least 6-4 Mayer. So, so was 8-2 Mayer insane? In other words, you're saying it had to be at least 6-4 Mayer, but then so 8-2 Mayer becomes insane, becomes just a non-rational, corrupt human being? I mean, it doesn't really make sense. So, and again, I'm not saying giving her no rounds was, great, but it was competitive. I'm very competitive. Great. I thought it was a great fight. Hamadouche showed a lot of heart. She was laying a lot of punches, but she just, wasn't getting the rounds to me. She was getting hit with the harder shots, the harder, cleaner shots, and Mayer was controlled. Mayer was in control of that fight. Like you said, she started then pivoting, giving herself a little distance as the fight went on. I mean, there just was no doubt she was in control of that fight and landing the harder shots. So I thought she should just get credit for a really good winning performance. And then, you had Eddie Hearn after the fight saying that Hamadouche won. Now, I mean, that's nuts. That is nuts. That is nuts. He's her promoter, and he's saying she won, and people are saying, see, Eddie Hearn says she won. He's disgusted. And that would have been the nuttiest scorecard in the house if she won and Eddie Hearn's her promoter. What do you think? You think Eddie Hearn's got an unbiased opinion on this fight? I mean, come on, people. Be realistic here. Just look, everybody's got biases. That's what it comes down to. I mean, humans all have biases, and that's why when boxing, it's not like football or basketball where you score points. I mean, it's subjective. So you get a lot of disagreements.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, not giving her one or two, not even one round or even a round is of course that's bad, but yeah, you gotta keep it in perspective.
Exactly, it was bad, but it just wasn't. It wasn't, to me, the spot for like some other agenda or trying to prove some point. Mayer won the fight. They got the winner right. Yeah,
definitely, like pretty clearly, no doubt about it. Any other items you want to talk about from the weekend before we get into Munguia and Rosado, a fight that on Boxing Twitter, the hardcore fight scene, just because of what Gabe has done recently with the Jacobs fight, even though it was horrible, but a lot of people thought he won or whatever, and then the knockout, and Munguia, generally an all-action type guy who actually has some skills to set up his punches and whatnot, but anything else you want to talk about before we jump into some of these fights?
No, I think we completely covered last weekend as far as the most relevant, most important action. So I'm ready to go into this weekend with the Munguia Rosado, and then we got the Benavidez Davis.
Yeah, and it's what let me see here real quick. The odds for the main event between Munguia and Rosado. I'm on ProBoxingOdds.com, which is a great site because it kind of gives you such a variety of odds across the board.
It's a great page. Everybody should check that out periodically.
Definitely, and I'd say the lowest right now, the lowest as far as an underdog. Gabe's at plus 400. Otherwise, it's plus 425, plus 450. I see a handful of 500s, and then FanDuel actually does have plus 550. So for the folks out there that think Munguia is overrated or whatever, just not experienced enough to beat a veteran guy like this. Now, Gabe is coming down in weight, and I wonder, because hasn't he been up there for a little bit, or was it just that one fight?
No, he's been fighting at 168
just that one fight
for a while. He has been fighting at 168 recently. He with his fights, he had Jacobs and then Beck. He fought those fights at 168. So and he, I think. He's been doing that. Of course, he had started out as one junior middleweight, 154, and then fought at middleweight a lot, 160. But he's fought a lot at 168. Yeah, now he's back at a middleweight. So I figured, since you had mentioned, Chris, I pulled up my DraftKings, and I see that there has been some money on Rosado, because on DraftKings, Munguia was, I think he was a minus 1,000, and now tonight at this time, he's now a minus 700, and Rosado's a plus 500. So, like you said, there's been a big club of Munguia's overrated. They've got a chance to put their money where their mouth is here. But, Munguia is obviously still a really big favorite. So I've had to think about that too, because I've liked Munguia more than most people. I think you see some things he's added to his game with Morales, but it looks very mechanical. I've said this before. He's a guy, even though he had flaws, I was kind of okay, frankly, with what he did with his father. I mean, he just really unloaded with his power, and he would knock guys out, knock them down. Maybe he was open some, but I thought he was on track. And, they started bringing different people in, brought somebody in for a bit before Morales, then it went to Morales. And, I see where Morales has done some good things with him, but it's just a little mechanical. It doesn't look natural to me. I figured they'll keep doing that. Does that give Rosado enough of an opening? A little bit tricky, but I'm thinking no. Even that fight with Beck, Rosado, it was a great win. He caught him with a bomb, exciting, tremendous knockout, give him all the credit in the world. But, he looked like he was about on his way out shortly before that. So
yeah, he was in trouble.
Before landing that. Yeah, he was in trouble. He looked like he was about on his way out, and he landed that bomb. So a lot of times I have learned that you do have to take that into your analysis, because it's not a situation where he was like dominating the fight or something like that. And as you correctly pointed out, the Jacobs fight was very close, no argument there, but it was just a horrible fight where nothing was going on. So, again, wasn't like he took control of the fight and did a lot of good things in that fight. I like Rosado. Look, there were other efforts recently he's given too where he was very close, against Soljecki. He dropped them and was fairly lost, was close. I thought he got a bad decision against Martin Murray in the UK. I thought he should have gotten that decision. So, he's had some fights where in recent years where he's competed with upper level fighters enough that, he did break into the transnational rankings at 168 at 10, and he deserved it, after the Beck KO. But now, again, right back down at 160, and again, with I think overall the too many weight classes, there's some openings in some of these weight classes. They at 160 and 168, to kind of make some noise just because of the lack of depth as much as anything. But I don't know. I just don't know if dropping back down to 160 pounds now. He's a guy in his mid-30s. That is usually tough. There can be some exceptions here and there. The most notable being Donaire in recent years, but that's the exception. The rule is you get older, you try to drop back down. It's not going to work out when you got it, because you just from the
and he didn't look good at the higher weight either.
Yeah.
Like it'd have been different if those weights fit him nicely. Like it is Gabe, but they didn't fit him nicely at all.
No, true. It's like you're right. Rosado is coming off a good performance, not a bad performance at an upper weight. Good point. So that's sometimes right when it makes even less sense to cut back down. I'm going to think Munguia's power is going to be too much for Rosado, because I don't think Munguia is really going to have any trouble hitting him. So I just think, and he's got power. I think Munguia, the power is real, especially in the left hook. But he's got a decent right hand fist, so power is going to unload. I think that's what the odds makers are looking at, and you got to look at them first, like we say. Doesn't mean they get it right every time, but they're right more than you are, and you can't ignore it. So you got to look at your spots where you're gonna try to say, no, I see something else here. And people will, I think you're right. People will do it here. A lot of people don't believe in Munguia. So I imagine that these odds probably do get closer by the time Saturday night comes. Rosado will get some money, but it was kind of a wider line than I would have expected on Munguia. But taking this one over, I just think, being closer to his prime like he is and with the power he's got, he should be able to get Rosado out of there. Rosado is getting to an advanced age at this point, even though he's coming off some good performances. But I believe in Munguia more than most people as well, too, just ability overall. So I think he's got flaws, but I think people kind of underestimate him, and including maybe even to some degree his own promotional outfit, because I will be the first to say they seem to be being awful cautious with him for whatever reason. But you know, he is a young guy still. So, you know, forget the alphabet belt stuff. He's a young guy. So I just think they're kind of building him up in that manner. And I think he probably takes another step forward and just gets Rosado out of there.
Yeah, and to your point, looking into it, on average, the Rosado odds started back in October 26th at plus 600, and now the average is 460 when I'm looking at it on the end of that pro boxing odds. They have, you know, they don't have like the round by round and knockout and all that much. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think it was 3 fights now. Like you mentioned, I just double checked to make sure it was 3 fights at 168. Now you're coming down, and you're right. I mean, to your point, it's like, you know, it's 30. This is his 38th fight now. He's 25 years old. It is time to have him step up more than they've had. I thought at 54 there were some, you know, Dennis Hogan, that was a tight fight. Inoue, Liam Smith, of course, you know, how he got it originally with that Saddam Ali. You know, he's fought some decent fighters at 160, you know, Gary O'Sullivan, whatever, you know. That's Sullivan had kind of gained a little hardcore fight fan type of stuff, but it was just a way to move him. Torreno Johnson. Yeah, I mean, I got to admit, I haven't been as high on him as you. I think we've had this discussion in the past, but I do think his overall, not just power, but I just think the volume over time, he does throw a good jab. Like I mentioned, he's an accurate puncher. He doesn't, you know, a while back, sometimes he'd flurry out of control. Other times it was like, yeah, I mean, this is what you want from the guy. He's got a guy hurt, you know, time to throw those combinations. So he was a little leakier on defense, not to say that he's super tight on it now, but it does seem like they've at least tried to address it. And, you know, Gabe, he's fought a lot of guys, man, over his career. You see, you know, 26-13 really doesn't do it justice, but he is now 35, 36 years old. You know, we know that he does get cut. He does get knocked down a lot. He just, you know, I hope he just puts on a fun fight. You know, at times he's a come-forward fighter, sometimes in the middle of the ring. A lot of times, though, you will see him try to box on the outside minorly, like even that Golovkin fight. Like when he faces a come-forward fighter, it is tough for him to rage forward there, and he's never had, although he just scored a highlight reel knockout, he's never had, you know, a fair amount of punching power per se. He really hasn't. I mean, not to take anything away from him because, like I said, he just knocked some dude out cold. But as you mentioned, he was pretty banged up in that. I think taking that knee was very smart in that fight, and more fighters should do that in general. But I'm with you. I think he's just going to, the youth, the combination punching, I think it'll just catch up to him whether it hurts him and he goes down and gets knocked out, or just TKO because he's worn down, punch resistance, you know, depleting, and maybe just cuts, you know, in general. You can definitely cut him. I know he took some time off, had some surgeries, but it's just a matter of time to where they'll pop back open. So I'm with you. I think he'll maybe a late TKO, but also, you know, a fairly strong possibility for just a clean decision win as well. And then David Benavidez, late notice, Kyron Davis. I'm hoping that'll just be a fun fight to watch. I'm assuming Showtime's doing some sort of Canelo plant, you know, replay on that. That's usually what they do a week after his brother Jose Benavidez Jr. returns against Francisco Emmanuel Torres. Rancis Bartholomew. Whoa, I didn't know he was fighting. He's fighting. Like I said, I think they're going to have I don't know how they're going to line it up, if it's going to be first or between fights or whatever, but I'm assuming they'll have that Caleb Plant and Canelo fight rematch. We also have, and here's another one that's just like Kid Gallahan against Kiko Martinez. And no, this isn't from 2015 or 13 or 16. This is right now for an IBF, you know, title. Kiko has just been passed around so often. Terry Harper does return in a fight against Baumgartner or something like that. I think that's her name. Yep, that's her name. So we have some other, fights, that are out there. What do you think? You think this is just kind of get in, get out, try to land some big punches and get Davis out of there for Benavidez? What do you think? You think Chiron can give him at least a good fight and make it interesting, for us at home watching?
No, I don't. I mean, I know there's a late notice opponent, but the Uzcata guy fight wasn't good either. This is, again, talked about it last week, and this applies to just too many weight classes. I mean, because again, we're doing this 168 thing, and look, Benavidez is really the number one contender guy now in that class with Plant Boss. He clearly is the number one. With Canelo now, everybody's champ in a 168, if you're going to recognize a 168. But there's just no depth. So, Benavidez, because again, it's one of those deals like, there's not that many guys you could have Benavidez fight. Canelo and Plant just fought last weekend. Even if you were going to go theoretically, there's not that many great matchups you could be pulling out of the top 10. So I'm not saying there's not better ones, but there's not a lot out there. So Davis ends up getting this assignment. I mean, he was in there with Durrell in a boring fight that was, kind of close. But, Durrell's 37. He's at the end of the line anyway. Seen Davis before, never really jumped out that impressive. I look at an example like, Ronald Ellis, to me, really came motivated and really prepared to try to win when he fought Benavidez. And, he got stopped but gave a good account for himself. But I'm just saying, I thought he brought a real good version of himself. So Benavidez got some good work there, more than you would expect it. And the stoppage was impressive. I didn't take anything away from Benavidez because I thought it was a real good, motivated version of Ellis that showed up. Why I point that out is that's one of the things I'm looking at in this fight. I'm like, can Chiron Davis even bring what Ellis could? A lot of people would be thinking yes. Myself, I'm thinking no. That's like one of the first things I'm looking at. I'm thinking, I don't think he can bring more than Ellis. I think, matter of fact, he'll bring less. So I would think that this is an even easier fight for Benavidez, and this to me this one should be over as soon as Benavidez really opens up to me. Sometimes he gets a little bit cautious. Like I said, I think he looks a little weak at this weight at times, and almost seems like he's got to make sure he paces himself. But I think when he opens up with his size and power, and I just think Davis is really just not on his level at all. Davis just isn't a legit top 10 opponent, even in a weak division. So I don't see this one as I really don't see this one as being competitive. So I think Benavidez should get him out of there as soon as he really opens up in this one.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I mean, sometimes, what he did against Durrell did pop back, look better at least, but he had that long layoff, so you got to put into that, as well. And, maybe he's in pretty good shape, but he definitely wasn't in camp like he was for that one, so like full camp or whatever. So I agree with you. I think that, it's just gonna kind of dot the I's, cross the T's, get in there, get out, and look for a big fight. Whether that comes, Canelo next or what, we'll see. Any other items that you want to talk about involving this weekend, or just in general that you want to get off your chest?
That should be about it. Like since you mentioned, Galahad, who has looked good lately. Martinez, that's garbage. I mean, that's just garbage. That Galahad's legit top 10. Kiko Martinez is just opponent level at this point. Shouldn't even be in this one. That's what I call a time waster. So, yeah, I mean that's not something we need to see. I don't even know why Hearn's making that fight, because he's got these other British featherweights he's obviously going to match Galahad up with. I mean, let's get to the fight. Not there wouldn't even be other matchups outside of the Brits, but I mean, at least some of those are decent matchups. So, let's get to it. I mean, I don't know where this Kiko Martinez fight came from, and nobody needs it. So that's a mismatch. And Galahad's not a huge puncher, but he's sharp and he hits you a lot, and they're sharp. So he should bust Martinez up before the final bell on that one and get him stopped. But that's a time waster. Otherwise, just we're not getting the pay-per-view numbers released. A lot of people try to say they don't care and things like that. But hey, it matters for the popularity of sport. It matters for the marketing of the sport and what fighters have marketing leverage, which, let's face it, like it or not, it's going to have a lot to do with what fights are made. So I was curious I hadn't heard anything yet how Saturday night ended up doing. And, I hope, I'm not saying this will be the case, but, I hope with Plant, now he has made a big payday, an 8-figure payday. I hope though that, obviously he's going to keep, he says he's going to keep continuing fighting. I hope he doesn't go in too soft. I mean, I know he just got stopped, but in other words, I'd like to see the career develop. You think of those examples where a guy got in a good payday position, maybe had some talent, but wasn't quite ready, like we were saying. And then after they get the payday, they do the same thing even worse. In other words, they don't step it up, and then too much time goes by and they don't get developed. I hope we don't see that with Plant. I hope he takes a reasonably tough fight. Like we're talking about Durrell, like, really a perfect fight for him would, and Anthony Durrell might have to accept he's not going to get the Canelo fight. If he doesn't, that would be an interesting fight that at least would be a stiff enough of a test for Plant to come back with to develop. And for Durrell, that you would think that would be a pretty good payday. So, and at least a guy who's more of a name now. So, that might, but I hate to see Plant just start taking on soft touches and never really developing, what abilities he's got.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, definitely. That Durrell would be, I think that's a good spot to go. I mean, it lines up to make a lot of sense, and, maybe they put that on a Fox main event or something like that. Who knows? All right, well, I appreciate you calling in, and you have yourself a good night. Enjoy the fights. Hopefully we, get a fight to just kind of pop off, this weekend, and we got some good fights. Maybe that Munguia Rosado will be a war. Who knows?
That is what's good about boxing. I mean, nobody can deny. You never know, and that's one of the reasons we watch the fights. So it's not out of the question. So let's hope we get something good this weekend.
There you have it. You have yourself a good night. We'll talk next week.
All right, Chris. Thanks for having me as always. Have a good night.
Yes, sir. Have a good one.
Take care.
All righty. That was always good to talk to John. Like I mentioned, a great boxing mind. We're going to go to Portland in here just a second. I did get some messages. Okay, so I would say who they were, but you can't tell by their Twitter account. But a lot of people are like saying the only interest, or a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people. A lot of what this message is saying is the only interest of people in general, and case in point was this weekend, is, if this was Benavidez or this was Bivol or even Joe Smith at 175, guys with real power, although I think Benavidez has power. I already mentioned how Charlo doesn't have, the same power he had at 154, and assumingly 168, his power wouldn't get any better, right? Now, he does have to cut to make 160, so you never know. Maybe that will help him carry what he does have at 160. Let's not act like that jab's not a power jab, but they're basically saying the only thing that, they're going to be able to make any money off of is a fight with Benavidez or Bivol. And I got, and they went on to say you saw the difference between, and this is just on some fanboy stuff. I'm not trying to get too deep into this one, but you see the difference between that massive crowd, to watch Billy Joe Saunders, the guy that, not at super middleweight, but at middleweight did fight Andy Lee and Eubank Jr. and Lemieux and stuff like that. And so that's why the people came out, and they couldn't do it at a stadium and all that. And that's just, this is what I'm talking about. Like, and I've seen this account on Twitter. I don't follow it or anything like that. Well, I don't now, but this is like, come on, dude. Like, I get it. Like, the campaign to just hate on the PBC no matter what just gets ridiculous because, go back and look at the Jacobs fights. That was like a large-ass gate, like $8 million. Kovalev was right around that, $8 or $9 million. I think it was $9 million for that Billy Joe Saunders fight. And that's the thing. When things do well at gates and the crowd, gets into it and all that, it's usually, before the PBC came in, no matter who it was celebrated. It was always celebrated. Like, wow, they got a big crowd. They're, generating these large, revenues and all that. And person is just like a Steve, like back years ago, before Steve Kim blocked me, he used to retweet anything. Well, not anything, but a lot of stuff, Used to have a podcast, this person. I think this is the one. Like I said, I don't know the names. But it's like, dude, like the plant, okay, so it's been reported anywhere from 17 to 18 million. I've heard 18 million at the live gate. I've heard 17. Someone, actually, Lance Pugmire said it generated 17 million, which, like the Canelo Golovkin did like 26 or 28 the first one. Then the second one still did like 23 or 25. There was a little drop, but still over 20 million is my point. And I remember a fight like Mayweather and Maidana did like 15 or 16 at the gate. I mean, the Wilder Fury Part 2 did almost 17, I believe it was, or was it almost 18? One of the two. Just the whole point is, we're talking about like this gate right here. If it's whether it's 17 or 18 million, these gates just don't, like, with inflation, right? Obviously, from 2007 till now, there's a lot of inflation at that time. Prices go up and all that, but Oscar and them, because of the gate, did almost 18 million. I mean, in 2013, Mayweather and Canelo did 20 million. But like I said, the ticket prices went up, the pay-per-view price went up and all that. But my point is to sit there and say, so Charlo and so you're telling me Benavidez, a Mexican-American fighter who has, when people Google the highlight reels of Benavidez and then his cool kind of laid-back character in the interview, but also tell you like it is, and just like I said, the highlight reel on this guy, to sit there and say it's going to not sell as well as a Bivol fight or a Better Bia fight. I want to see all these fights, but why don't we just deal reality? 17 or 18 million at a gate probably puts it, I'd say for sure in the top 10 live gates of all time. I mean, this fight right here did more live gate than any UFC fight ever. Now, I'm not trying to rip UFC. I'm just trying to put stuff in perspective. When you're a top 10 gate-ish, somewhere in there, top 10, I mean, I'm looking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's probably, it's probably like 8th or something. I don't even know. But you're in the top 10 of gates all time, and you're sitting there saying Canelo Plant didn't do good because it's not in a stadium. That's what we've been trying to tell some of these folks, that when you're in a stadium, you got to sell the tickets for cheaper. And I love stadiums. Shouts out to the UK. We've been starting to get our stadium fights over here now, too. It's a beautiful thing. But if Vegas is going to pay you whatever, $5 or $10 or more $1 million just to have the fight there, then you can generate $17 million or $18 million at the gate. Like I said, this stuff used to be celebrated. You know, we used to put sides away. Well, first of all, there wasn't built-up sides that were so obvious. I think social media and the podcast game has kind of exploited that. You got to actually hear the media's actual true feelings or their true colors in some sense, right? But come on, dude. You're saying Charlo? So both these guys are undefeated. A Mexican-American on either Cinco de Mayo or Mexican Independence Weekend, you don't think that'll sell? You think Benavidez is going to do better than that? I mean, Charlo's going to be, and Benavidez can talk shit too, by the way. Charlo, you don't think he's going to get some attention off of this? You don't think that's going to sell pretty well? I mean, this is just so silly. You know, so many people on Twitter said, oh, this is a shitty fight. Why? This is a worthless fight. Then it does a top 10 in gate. But the Billy Joe Saunders was celebrated because it's a huge crowd, which it should be celebrated. We celebrated it here because it's freaking awesome. Anytime you can create a live gate like that, whether it's at a stadium, an arena, it just, the visuals are awesome, right? It just, come on, guys. What the hell? Okay, and then one more thing. Breaking down some of the odds for the opponents, possible opponents for Canelo. My bookie, right? This is from my bookie. Benavidez right now plus 125 as an underdog. Golovkin plus 200. Jermell Charlo plus 400. Smith Jr. plus 450. Bivol 500. Andre 500. Better be of 650 because so many people know him, I guess. That's kind of crazy. Murata plus 900 and Usman plus 1,500. That's right. I forgot to throw him into the mix, I guess. But it's just like some of these messages, dude. Like, seriously, dude? So you're saying nobody cared about this at all? Then why'd they sell so many tickets then? And also, real quick, before we get to Portland here, this is from Ring Magazine. This is Eddie Reynoso on working with Al Heyman. We did a deal directly with Al, and everything has gone really well so far. There's plans with him. We hope to continue to work with him. There's big fights we can make. And then, you know, he went on to say Charlo and Benavidez, but also mentioned Bivol and in Beterbiev and whatnot. It wasn't just that. So yeah, I mean, this looks like, you know, a nice little relationship here, and it does take the promoter part out of it, that you don't have to, like, if he were to sign a deal with Bob would get a fair chunk of split of that, as long as it was, you know, signed like he normally does for pay-per-views. That's extra money coming out of Canelo's pocket. That's extra money to cover the balance overall to try to actually get in the red. But we'll see on these, you know, whether it's 400, 500, 600, 700,000, I don't know. But if you do a gate that size, they said that they basically had to break 500,000 something. So let's say 525, 550, that was going to break it. Or that was going to break even, I should say, not break it. But anyway, let's go out to Portland, 5:03. By the way, a minute left of the live stream. Anyone listening to the browser right now, you got a little time. You got a minute, a little less than a minute to call in. 646-381-4990. That's 646-381-4990. That'll be the number to call because the show's going to cut you off if you're listening to it in the browser. It only has a 2-hour live stream window. All right, we still have a bunch of current fight news coming up. And of course the boxing Twitter segment and all that good stuff. Let's go out to Portland, 5:03. What's going on, man? You got to be feeling good here on a Tuesday afternoon after what happened in the ring on last Saturday.
Mexicanos al grito de guerra, el acero apretado y el rigor. Y retiembla en sus centros la tierra al sonoro rugir del cañón. Y retiembla en sus centros la tierra al sonoro rugir del cañón. Ciño patria, tus sienes de oliva, de la paz, de la majestad y el brigón, y retiembla en sus centros la tierra al sonoro rugir del cañón. Y retiembla en sus centros la tierra al sonoro rugir del cañón. ¡Viva México!
Yo, what up, Chris? Hell yeah, man. We happy over here, bro. It's been nothing but like just happy, overwhelming joy. You know what it is, Chris? Los Mexicanos are up, man. It looks like the pound for pound king of boxing is a Mexicano, man. The king of PBC now. The head of PBC is Mexicano Canelo. Man, what can I say, man? We're happy over here. You know, the things have changed. Plant went down, but before I start, bro, how you doing, Chris? How's everything? How's everything, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really good, and that was another great performance by Canelo, sticking to that game plan and wearing his opponents down.
Oh yeah, man, hell yeah, bro, and yeah. So the night, man, we're excited. From opening bell, right? Like right at the beginning, once you hear that Mexican anthem, man, you know what's up. You know what's up. It like you know some real shit's about to happen, man. And Plant for Plant, man, what can I say? You know, I just thought, in my opinion, I had last week I had a prediction of 8 rounds. What can I say? But Plant showed some toughness. You know, if I could critique Plant a little bit, I just wish he threw more hands. I just felt he was more of a defense that night. He didn't. That shoulder roll was something though. He did avoid a lot of big right hands, but Canelo was getting in with them left hooks, man, to the top of the head, and eventually he got to take him down to hurt him. Twice, right? And but man, what like you said, what a performance from Canelo. You know, a lot of people, man, I don't know what to say, but a lot of people had that the scorecards, Plant winning high, and I don't know what I didn't see that. I thought Canelo was winning pretty widely. I believe after the third, and but Canelo, man, showed power, he showed toughness. He showed skills, and man, and everybody was there that night. All the A sides from boxing, right? And man, just a historic moment for Mexico, for Canelo. Reynoso, shout out to him, man. He's damn trainer of the year. The fight definitely lived up to its hype. I was excited, it was worth it, man. I couldn't believe $80 too. Holy shit, man! Holy crap! But hey, it was worth it. It was worth the price. It was worth the results. So I'm just happy, like you said, Chris. Over here, man. Thank you for letting me play the anthem long, having it shine for for the Mexicanos tonight, bro. Because what happened last Saturday was awesome, man. And for that, you know what I mean? Because that's just historic, man. That's historic for all of us. And but man, and but as far as Plant, if I could say, I just hope he doesn't go missing after this. Sometimes I feel like after they get these PBC fighters, when they get huge paydays, they go kind of missing for a while. So I would like, even though they get knocked out, I would just still like to see them sometime late next year. So don't let time kind of skip by. Like a lot of these other fighters do. So but as far as Canelo, I know a lot of people out there want the Benavidez and what's the other PBC, the Charlos, and those are fun fights. But if I could say something, man, I think Canelo at this point those are obviously those are the ones the fans want, but I just feel like Canelo is going to go after like what legacy shit. So I think he's going to go to Bivol or what was that, Betterby? Like I just feel like he's going to. Or maybe try to get Ward out of retirement. Everybody seems to be talking about that. That seems to be a hot topic, right now. So out of everything, I just believe that's what's going to happen next. I would definitely like to see Benavidez. If I could pick, it would be Benavidez next. Because man, I would love to see that fight, man. A Mexico versus Mexico fight, man. I think, and seeing the signs of Benavidez, reach advantage, and he actually comes into the fight with power. So it would be scary, for Canelo. So, but man, that would be my pick for Canelo. But I just feel like he's going to go for the legacy route. But yeah, man, like you said, it's historic. It was a damn cool event. Everybody was there, and what I was gonna say about there was the funny the translator at the end was funny. If anybody caught that, he kind of fucked up there. He's like,
Canelo's getting finish what I said, dude.
Yeah. Canelo's getting good on his English, and checking these fools. You know what I mean? Like, it's about time. Sometimes these fucking these translators are horrible. And also too, man, something came up. If I can mention real fast, something came up online, and I believe you saw it too, Chris. And it was that little moment in one of the rounds where Plant and Canelo were kind of having a talk with each other.
Talking to each
right?
other.
Where they were like Plant was kind of being too, in my honest opinion, that was a little too respectful for my taste. I just thought, seeing that made me think, okay, this is why he got knocked out. This is, you don't really, you should have been going in there thinking like a dog, you know what I mean? Like thinking nothing else, tearing this dude apart, not respecting him, fighting in the inside dirty, fighting in the outside dirty, do everything you can to get this fucking win. But, I just thought seeing that little moment.
Well,
I was
probably
like,
won that round, though. It was the 8th round. He probably won that 8th, 9th round. Yeah, he probably won those 2 rounds. But I know what you're saying. That happens more than we think. Like fighters talking to each other. But this one was interesting because we actually caught it,
Yeah. Yeah, but like what Plant was saying though, I respect your skills, and it's like, yo, this is a good fight, and what else he say? He said something like I'm not bad for like 21-0, right? Like, huh? Like trying to get his his kind of his what's that word? Like his attention, you know what I mean? Like trying to get his focus. I don't know, man. It's just too polite for me. I would have just told him to, you got to think like, you got to go in there as a dog, man. That's it. You know what I mean? Nothing else. Try to go for a kill, man. And I that's just my take. But yeah, man. As far as that, what's his name? Canelo did it. One for Mexico. And speaking about Mexico, man, we got another one this weekend. It's just what's his name? Jaime Munguia. What the fuck is his name? Damn, Chris, can you help me out real quick?
Gabe Rosado.
Gabe Rosado, thank you, Chris. Gabe Rosado right now. Mexico, Puerto Rico. I got Jaime Munguia. You already know Mexico all day. That's gonna be a fun scrap, and also Benavidez, right? Benavidez, Kyrone Davis. Benavidez should get the win. I've never heard of Kyrone Davis before. This should be a fun fight. Also, his brother Jose Benavidez scrapping it up too on the undercard against Francisco Emmanuel Torres. So that should be a fun fight too. And also too, man. Before I get out of here, man, Chris, did you get to see that the stare down between Jojo Diaz and Haney?
The stare down.
It was the press conference.
Did they have a press?
Yeah, the presser. Did you get to see that?
I did. Yep. I kind of forgot there were so many press conferences that day.
Right, man. Dude, that's a lot of fights going on. And but man, what like this fight, man? I just gotta say, Jojo Diaz. This is a dangerous fight for Jojo Diaz, man. This guy, Haney looks like a different weight class compared to this dude, man. But I'm wishing Jojo Diaz the best. You already know Mexico, and it should man. I don't know hopefully Jojo Diaz comes in ready for that one, man, because that dude looked pretty big there, man. And but yeah, man. As far as that, I don't got too much else to say, Chris. I just want to thank you for having me on, man. Viva Rope and Dope and Viva Mexico, cabrones.
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot, Portland. Josue. Having a great weekend. No doubt about it. Yeah, the legacy, the thing about legacy is he can do all that. He can do 175. He doesn't necessarily have to bounce up there right now because those guys aren't going to, they're going to be here for the next year or two at least. I mean, Benavidez started, both of them kind of started at an older age because of their amateur career, but the amount of money that they're going to offer for Benavidez compared to the money that they're going to offer for Benavidez and Charlo. I think those are better fights than Callum Smith. I know he had a belt, but that doesn't, you know what I mean? They're just as good as Billy Joe Saunders, and I know he had a belt, but look who he got the belt from. So all these fights kind of mix in there. I'm not saying, he's not undisputed. Of course he is. He already accomplished that. But Benavidez and Charlo are just as good as Callum Smith, really. I mean, Callum Smith had a really close fight right before that. Now, he beat, a little while ago, he beat George Groves, and that was a nice win. But Groves was, on his last leg, So I think there's still some quality. My point is there's some quality fights there, and he can still fight Bivol and Benavidez. I mean, think about that. Let's say he fights Benavidez, Charlo, and then somebody else, whether that's Golovkin coming up to 168, whether in a year from now it's David Morrell, who knows. But just fight 2 to 3 more fights, then go all the way up to 75, and then campaign there instead of just jumping up, because jumping up and down after a while, he doesn't make 160 with ease, that's for sure, and it's not like there's a lot of fat on the guy, you know what I mean? He's in terrific shape. So to get these fights out of the way for more money, it's still legacy. These are undefeated guys. I mean, he'd be on a string of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the last 6 would be undefeated guys that he beat, and then go up and fight, Bivol, Benavidez, and Joe Smith, by the way, too, Junior. So either way, I'm not going to get picky and be like, you have to do this, you have to do that. But if the zone couldn't offer the same amount of money for a Plant fight, I doubt they're going to offer more, because Plant has at least been, promoted on Fox for the last couple of years. So, and you could tell by the gate that means, that's going to be a little bit more. So it will be interesting. I still think these are legacy fights for the time period, because he'd be beating guys that are younger than him, guys that are undefeated, you know what I mean? But either way, whatever he chooses to do, I could care less as far as that goes. But I think it just makes sense in general to kind of get 3 or 4 more fights done at 68, so we can literally be like, hey, there's nobody else here for me to fight. Then go up to 75 and campaign for a long time. Now, someone messaged me that we didn't get to go all the way to this last week, and I got a message actually right before today during the show, or before the show, during the show, and there are a fair amount of folks just seem that they think Stevenson and Valdez is next, and I hope it is, but it's probably not going to be. I mean, even probably almost over a week ago, Benavidez, or not Benavidez, but Bob Arum said it himself. I mean, the headlines on BoxingScene.com: Arum eyes Valdez Navarrete and Stevenson Burchelt with the winners fighting each other. That's what top-ranked CEO Bob Arum says. So it's like a mini, tournament in a sense. And the idea of that, we can suggest it to the fighters, he says, but ultimately it'll be the fighters and their management who decide who's next. He said, I'd like to do that and then match them up. And, as long as it happens in 2022, I'd be okay with that. I don't think that's ducking anybody or anything like that. They could make a decent gate number there, whether it's in Phoenix or LA or something like that with Navarrete. And I mean, Oscar and Navarrete is just a brawl waiting to happen, isn't it? I mean, that would be a fun fight either way. And then Navarrete, if he loses that fight, well, then he can just go right back to 126, you know. And I know he hasn't been at 126 that long, but look at him, dude. He I don't think 26 to 30 is going to hurt him. He's just a big dude, you know. Not like he's chubby or something at 126. You know what I mean? The dude's skinny but put together. He's got a frame to go to 130 is my point. So if the worst thing is losing to Oscar Valdez in a war, in a great fight, shit, that might be fight of the year. You never know next year. And then going right back to 126, I don't think that's a bad deal. And, I understand people want it next, and that's cool. But in reality, that's not the boxing game generally. So if they could match it up and then probably put Stevenson back in New Jersey at the Prudential Center or something like that, somewhere on the East Coast, and then meet the winners, I'd be down for that. I don't look at that as people ducking or anything like that. Burchell, did his style of fighting in this last fight take something out of him? I mean, possibly. You never know. Some of those guys like him don't have a major shelf life, but a fair amount of people did favor him over Valdez in that fight. So I still think that's a good fight for Stevenson and definitely Valdez and Navarrete. Then they meet next fall or the winter, whatever, early winter, December, November of next year. Basically a year from now, so they fight sometime in the spring or summer and then fight. I'd be fine with that. Problem with that at all. So that's kind of clarifying that. I did get some messages last week and this week, so I wanted to clarify some of that. I didn't want to ignore the people, sending that stuff. By the way, we're going to get to some current fight news, just some other items out there. Virgil Ortiz has officially left Robert Garcia. Now, we don't know exactly where he's going. It does sound like, he's going to train with Eddie Reynoso. Coppinger said, as it reported at ESPN Plus on the stream, he said that they parted ways, and he will train with Eddie Reynoso. Now, Virgil did push back. He said, unless me or my manager or my dad has spoken on anything related to my career, don't believe it. And it was more like the Eddie Reynoso part. So a little bit of a surprise there, I would have to say. But if he goes to Eddie, then it's not like it's a bad move or something like that, right? I think that's a pretty damn good move. But we'll see. We'll see where that goes. And maybe, maybe Canelo being with the PBC as far as being able to do business with him, maybe that will help Virgil sneak in the door. What about that? Who knows? By the way, Team USA for the World Championships had some success, man, in the 2021 World Championships. Gonzalez and Harvey got gold medals. And we don't see gold medals a lot, World Championships or Olympics or anything like that. I think 4 had medal rounds. But, yeah, 2 golds and a silver. I think it was Hill. Or, wait. No, Hill took the bronze. That's what it was. Yep, that's what it was, a bronze and then a silver. So Jamal Harvey, did, win the World Championship at, featherweight. I think it's the first since Rocky Juarez. That dates back, looking at boxing scene right now, to 1999. And he beat someone from Kazakhstan. So it's not like, you know what I mean? That's not always an easy thing to do, right? But, yeah, he had a beautiful run. Then Raheem Gonzalez of Vegas, he actually had to come from behind. He beat a dude from Belarus. He took the medal. So that was pretty damn impressive. Roscoe Hill is the one who got a bronze medal, I believe. Or wait, did he get a silver? Yeah, he had a silver. That's right, he had silver. And that's the first flyweight medal since 2011 with Rasheed Warren. So, and then Omar Jones, I think that's who got the other medal. But, yeah, the 4 medals is the most medals won by a men's elite team since 1999. So we saw some improvement this last go-around, in the Olympics. And now look at what we did here at the World Championship. So, obviously, some positive things going on there. We'll see if they can keep, keep it going just in general. This is from Jake Donovan yesterday on BoxingScene.com. Aleem and Havanosian, WBA schedules November 12th purse bid hearing for a title eliminator. Rashid Aleem will be forced to wait out a purse bid hearing to determine whether to stick with the present plans or to pursue an avenue intended to lead to a major title. And so basically this might, turn him into a, if he wins this fight, whoever wins this fight, then that would be, it even says, to define the next mandatory for MJ, Akhmadaliev, which that's a damn good fight right there. It says the Aleem would be afforded the favorable end of the purse bid split in a final eliminator to determine who would face the WBA and IBF welterweight, Uzbekistan, right, that guy. And he actually has a fight against Ronnie Rios, coming up here too. So, and we know Aleem had, a fight already scheduled, but it got mixed up. So he's going to wait it out and see if he can't put himself in to the mix, so he can get a title shot against it would be a really good fight. So there is that. We have some other news. Oh boy. Okay, so as we know, Jake Paul is fighting Tommy Fury. A lot of people think it's a garbage fight. Some people think it's a garbage fight. Some people think that they're happy, that he's stepping up to a boxer. They're doing exactly what was said. It sounds like Tyson Fury's, involved in this one. So they are kind of hyping it up that way. Amanda Serrano is on the undercard, so shouts out to her. That's good for her, that's for sure. She actually just tweeted this today. Happiness is being able to do what you love again on the biggest stages. Again, I'll be the co-main in the pay-per-view, Showtime pay-per-view event, December 18th in Tampa. And she said, don't forget to get your pre-sale tickets using my code Sariano1218. So something to keep in mind there. I'm happy for her. But the part on the undercard, and since it's this YouTuber / whatever reality star, both these guys, turned to boxing of late, Fury and Jake. Check this out. So this is ESPN ringside. NBA venture point guard Darren Williams will fight running back Frank Gore, NFL star, in a boxing match. Okay. Now, one thing I'll say, so it's NFL versus NBA. Okay, that's going to be added to it. It makes sense because Frank Gore is a very popular fighter. Popular. A lot of people know his name. He played in the league so long. He has a lot of yards, and it's pretty crazy that he tore his ACL at a time that you didn't always come back great from ACLs. He tore it when he was at college in Miami. He was a third string behind Portis and McGahee, if you can believe that. But anyway, Frank Gore. One thing I know about Frank Gore is he's been boxing training for a long time. I know it's over a decade. I don't know if it's how long, like when he actually started, but I know this about him, that he's been in a boxing gym, not necessarily working out and sparring all these time, but, he's been throwing punches and doing a boxing workout for quite some time. I say that only because I don't know, Darren Williams. I know him as a basketball player, but I don't know if he's messed around in a gym just of late, or he's the type of guy that, because sometimes like Damian Lillard, right? Dame uses it as a workout. You see that with a lot of pro athletes in the offseason. So, but I would put my money, just from what I know about Frank Gore, I put my money on that. I put my money on Frank Gore, to be honest with you. Connor Ben and Chris Algieri in Liverpool, December 11th on DAZN. So they keep moving them against, veteran, older guys. Not a lot of power, but I get it. I do get it. Here's another one. Okay. So, and this has to do with Triller. So Triller, now they have a new theme. Okay. Now it's a new thing. It's a new boxing MMA idea. So their first big fight is Frank Mir versus Kubrat Pulev. Okay, this is going to be November 27th. And so it's this new sport that they're coming up with, triad combat? What? Triad? So it's triad. Okay, I get it, because it's triangle ring. So it's a mixture of boxing and MMA. I think there's a little wrestling and kicking involved. It's in a triangular ring over 2-minute rounds using crossover gloves. So I don't know if it'll be a mixture or they're inventing a new glove as well. I don't know. But to me, this is, who knows? I mean, didn't they have that boxing that was in they set up was it bare knuckle boxing that was going to take over because they set up the ring more so you'd have to fight and all that, and that was going to take over boxing, and everything is going to take over boxing. And, it is what it is. Maybe there'll be some fun fights. I don't know. But Kevin Draper had a tweet saying, if Triller ever complains about the media not taking it seriously, here's a line from its latest press release. The highly anticipated debut of Triad Combat on Saturday, November 27th, is expected to shatter all existing pay-per-view records in a unique broadcast, which will include special surprises throughout. So this thing's going to do, what was it, 4.6 million or something, 4.7 million or something that Manny and Floyd did. This is going to break the record. That's what they're sending press releases out. So yeah, it's this new combat team sport which incorporates boxing and all that. And it's basically featuring a boxer competing against a mixed martial arts. This is John Nash saying, the one gimmick rule set I keep waiting for is someone to try again all-in wrestling or shoot or anything goes catch as you catch. What? Catch as you catch can. Oh, catch me as you can. So shooting and wrestling where you can, dive and get the hell out of there. Basically the old pro wrestling rule set with 3-second pin submissions, no closed fist to the head. Okay, that's what he's saying he's waiting for. That's not what this is, though. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. This is, I'm not really interested in that. But, it is what it is. If you want to go for it, go for it, I'm not going to stop you. This is actually from Crawford interview with the Timothy Bradley Jr., who, is clearly biased for Crawford. I loved him as a fighter, definitely. So with him, on broadcasting. Sometimes he's right on, other times he's a little excited about a fight that's not really, I don't know, saying stuff like just too pro top rank stuff. Like I remember after a performance, Pedraza saying, okay, well, no one at 140 is going to fight Pedraza. They don't want it with him, that type of thing. Or like the Crawford versus Mayweather. He beats him, every day of the week, So basically like 100 times out of 100, he's beaten Floyd. And that's cool if that's your opinion, but So that kind of tells me that's an easy fight, is what he's saying. But this is what he told. This is what Terrence Crawford said. I told Sean Porter, I'm not looking to fight you. I'm looking to fight Arum. I'm looking to fight Keith Thurman because they got something to offer. I'm looking at them trying to use Sean as a pawn because he'll fight anybody. If I do too good, they may back up even more. We're here now. I'm going to show why these guys have been ducking, right? So he goes with the whole, duck thing. All right. Got a couple of tweets here. Back in my day, Canelo, Plant, Crawford, Porter, and Davis Cruz would be all in the same card. I mean, I don't know about that. Maybe on a Tyson card or something like that. Oh boy, here's another one. Why didn't Caleb Plant go hard with the USA angle? It was fed there for him to feast on. I do not understand these U.S. boxers who seem to be afraid to represent U.S. The crowd, although small, was there for it all. All he had to do was adapt their energy. Had Plant came out and said, no Mexico, USA, 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 and turned it into that, I think it would have sold out the roof. Fighters need better PR management, better PR coaches to stir up it's like, then it would have really sold, although it's top 10 gate of all time. It's just like, what? And not only that, but you're telling me just chant USA to Mexican fight fans is going to be better than slapping somebody at a press conference? I mean, I remember seeing that highlight, ESPN IG, it got like 92 million views. So it's like, come on, guys. Canelo still doesn't have a signature win. He doesn't have one that makes you say, damn, this validates Canelo. That he's a top-tier, all-time great. He had Floyd, who was right for the pickings. Could have been that guy. He got dominated in that fight, didn't win a round. GGG could have, but he lost the fight. But was gifted a decision. Then Canelo got exposed as a drug cheat. But he did win the second one. Charlo could have been that guy, but Canelo vacated and ran to a different weight class than Charlo, who was the mandatory. Right now he's beaten up on lower and mid-tier guys. You really can't say one of the best fighters of the last few decades. When his best win was arguably the Wash Kovalev. I think he beat Golovkin the second time. So, to me, you know what I mean? Oh, this Andre Ward stuff has been really funny, too. Now it's like, okay, who's going to win, Canelo or, because he went undisputed, now he had a better run at 168 or just at overall 168 because Ward didn't fight Boutte when he was in the tournament or like right fresh out of the tournament. Which, Kessler and Froch, to me, just those two names are better than anybody at 168 that he spot. Andre Ward is like the black cat crossing fighters training pass. Help Kirkland prepare for Canelo. Knocked out. Help Amir Khan prepare for Canelo. And this is funny because Kirkland, they how long was Kirkland out? So you thought Kirkland would have won if it was, but the black cat crossed him in his camp. Andre Ward. I mean, this is just so stupid. Help Jacobs prepare for Canelo. Did you think Jacobs was going to beat Canelo? Did you think Plant was going to beat him, though? The Ginger just did what Ward could never do at 168. At this point, Canelo holds a win over Andre. It's like, come on, guys. Come on, dude. Imagine being pound for pound king by beating guys named Callian, Billy, and Caleb. And someone says, talk to us about the Triple G run at fighting the 160 murderers row. That's a good point, too. Gabe Rosado beats Munguia after beating Beck earlier in the year. Would he be in contention for being Fighter of the Year? I think Comeback Fighter of the Year would be a little bit better, to be honest with you, in my mind anyway. Oh, Mikey Garcia, this random, like, doctor's note that sounds like he had the flu or something. He was sick. He was basically sick going into the Spence fight. That's what he just released, this information. I believe it was him. I saw this before the show, but it's just weird in November 2021 for a fight that happened in March 2019 to put out, hey, man, I was sick in that fight. Like, okay. But the weird thing is, okay, that's the weirdest part, but he must have either accidentally or whatever. He checked the white as a race for his medical documents, the paperwork. Someone actually said, Mikey, I see something Garcia going out bad. Who waits over 2 years to drop a doctor's note? Yeah, that was really weird. That was very strange. The doctor's note for Errol Spence loss looks weak on Mikey's behalf, to be honest. The real question is, why did he put white as race on the medical paperwork? Yeah, exactly. That was a little interesting there. I was like, huh. Okay. Breaking news, Caleb Plant suffered a left orbital fracture in the Canelo fight. And I did actually hear that that may have happened. I don't know if he had any kind of surgery or anything like that. I haven't heard that at all just yet. But I've heard that from a couple different sources, and one of them says that it's literally the Nevada State Commission. But I don't know that to be, a 100% fact. There was a picture of him that the eye did look kind of messed up, but it's kind of, you know what I mean? It's kind of tough to know exactly, what happened there. He is under suspension till next May in Nevada. And someone said that through that Nevada suspension that's where they talked about that. As far as, him coming down or whatever. Or him, having that eye injury. Okay, boxing would be a better place if there was big fights every weekend, but instead it's like one big fight every 6 months and average to mediocre matches in between. And it's just a weird timing to say that. Like, hey, we had a lull August, September. We had a lull there where fights were falling apart. They were getting postponed. And, it was like all of a sudden we had a good start to the year, and April was better than it normally was. Same with March. DAZN had a really good March. But March, April, May, and June, all the way through July, because we had that Undisputed. So, yeah, there was a couple months there where it kind of fell off, and then even the Plant Canelo fight got pushed back, right? But it's just weird to say we only get one big fight once a month, or, every 6 months right now. I mean, last month we had a lineal heavyweight championship fight. We've had how many this year? Is this our third undisputed? We've had 6 or 7 undisputed titles since the 4-belt era. And we had 3 of them this year. Now, one of them didn't get crowned because it was a draw. And then if you count the last year, let's say, because what was that, October or November? I want to say it was in October, mid-October. So the last 13 months, and I'm talking about the 2020 fall fight with obviously another undisputed, Teofimo Loma. 1, 2, 3, so 4 fights in the last 13 months were undisputed. And we're about to get, Porter and Crawford. You know what I mean? Like, it's just funny. And not to mention the unification fights in there too. We're getting more unifications than we used to. I'm not trying to say 2021 is just the best year in the last 5 years, nothing like that. But it started out good, took a lull, but now it's back to being pretty hot. But it's just funny to, like, tweet that out right now. I don't know, man. I don't know. I just don't get it. I think that's about it. It's funny that people still have bizarre ideas of how PBC operates. Oh, yeah, the sacrifice Sean Porter by helping him get a title shot for millions. PBC never said they lost money on Sean like they say about, Bud's promoter, Bob. Yeah, that whole, someone tweeted from DAZN that, it's a sacrificial lamb. Or maybe they were just tweeting what, I think they were tweeting what Crawford said. It's a sacrificial lamb. But, remember, it was a 60-40 deal to go over there. And there's no way, even though Crawford knows what it takes right now to make that fight, he even admitted it when him and Spence were talking about it. It's so what is Spence supposed to come over there for 60-40? We know he's not going to come over for 60-40. At least that's what he said. I do think, no matter what both of them say, I actually do think that Spence would do 60-40. I also don't think that, and Crawford said the opposite too. He said that on the A side, it shouldn't even be 50-50. I should get the cut, because of my accomplishments. And I think Crawford would take 50-50. Just because he says something else too. I don't think he would, just like I don't think Spence would be like, I'm going to 70-30 or 80-20. I'm going to 80-20. I don't think it'd be 80-20, But just time and time again, media members love to just stir this stuff up like it's real, Literally, he went over there for 60-40. $6 million and $4 million. That's what both fighters are. Now, you could make an argument that, hey, Crawford should just make that good-ass money and then wait till his contract comes up and then go fight him. But he's already signed with MTK. I don't know if it's a fight-by-fight or if it's a multi-year. I have no clue. But we'll see what happens after this fight. Canelo should go down to 150 and fight Tank, or Shakur can knock his ass out easily. Canelo should go down to 150, son. Tank or Shakur can knock his ass. Someone sent me this. That's a real tweet? Oh, my God. Oh, boy. That's a fun one. All right, one more here. Someone sent me this. Man, you fight nobody. This is what Canelo said to Andre. Is Canelo Alvarez a classic case of the pot calling the kettle black? Paper champion, how we referred to him. You fight nobody. You're a champion, but you're not fighting anybody. But what about you, Canelo? What top tier in the prime fighters has he faced? Seriously, dude? I mean, he recently has. And Lara was in his prime. Cotto wasn't. Floyd wasn't in his prime, but it was a big-ass fight. I mean, Golovkin, both fights was in his prime. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Danny Jacobs wasn't shot. Wow. It's just like, oh, boy, man. Some of these guys just get so emotional. Okay, that about wraps it up. Like I said, hopefully, on paper, Munguia and Rosado seem like the fight that's going to pop off the most. But let's hope we get some great fights this weekend. We'll definitely be back next week. Peace out.
Once you become the world champion, I believe that you feel